Have you asked Mike about that?
No, I haven't. I will though now.
Yeah, give him a little nudge.
All right, we're live. Holy cow, we're like whispering. We're like, oh we were talking about you, Mike. Well, good evening. Welcome to episode 45. Tonight, I am joined by the better half of the Kelvington family, Meg Kelvington, former captain, United States Army. Welcome, Kate. Meg, welcome. The rock behind the scene, the one that keeps it all together.
I like to think so. Yeah.
Don't we all? No, but you're probably accurate about it. So, but like I said, we posted some stuff. Meg's kind of a little bit of a social media superstar herself. I spent all day watching some of your previous interviews, and looking forward to hopefully talking about some of those things and a little bit more. So, we'll start off like we always do with the quote. We'll start off with the aviation quote, being that was your initial dream, right?
Yes.
So, this is from John Gillespie McGee Jr. Oh, I have slipped the slurry bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter's silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of some split clouds, and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlight silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. So,
yeah, that is an amazing representation of it. Yeah, because when people ask me, "Oh, do you ever miss flying?" I don't actually miss the act of flying, but man, on a cloudy day, to be able to get above a cloud layer and realize the sun is always shining and that there's a blue sky up there. So, like when he talked about that silver sky,
silver wings,
yeah, that's amazing representation of it.
And she's already like throwing quotes there, like 1 minute, 2 minutes in, she's giving us motivational stuff. We'll talk about that more. But if you haven't followed some of her stuff in the past, if you're new to here, but Meg comes from a huge military family. So I always ask with the first question if you've had influence. She's had a lot of influence. So she's not one of these people that's like one or two people. So I'll let you take over. So talk about your influence growing up from the military side.
So the big one is both my parents are West Point grads, class of 1980 for my dad and 81 for my mom. So my mom's the second class of women to graduate. Beyond that, though, on my dad's side of the family, my grandfather was a airplane mechanic during World War II. So the SPD Dauntless we all know about. And then my grandfather on my mom's side was an intel officer through Vietnam and was in the intel agency that was prior to the NSA. So, super secret squirrel stuff. And so I knew about So I grew up knowing about service, and it was actually, I was in 5th grade when I realized that not all college was like West Point. And so someone asked me like, hey, so do you think you want to go to a school like an academy, or do you want to, go to a regular college, see what that's all about? And I said, well, I was such a tomboy at the time. Not much has changed, but I was like, I just don't care, because once you go to college, you just get to wear a uniform and you don't have to pick out clothes anymore. And they were like, what are you talking about? And I said, well, yeah, because in college you wear your cadet uniform, so you don't have to worry about clothes. And that was when they were like kind of realized wow, you were like real brainwashed. We're gonna break this down that not everyone wears a uniform in college.
So I have to ask you, you learned about service, right?
Yes.
Was there a lot of pressure from you? Did you ever feel like there was pressure from your mom and dad that you had to go that route?
No, quite the contrary. So when they wanted to make sure that because I grew up in it, that it was in fact my choice. And so when I was a freshman and in high school and we lived in the Boston area, we went to Brown University and Mount Holyoke and Norwich, actually.
She said that with such like...
Yeah, no, it was great. But to ensure I knew that there were a bunch of different options out there. And then when we moved to Virginia for my second part of high school, we went to things like William and Mary and UVA and Tech. And to ensure that my eyes were wide open when making my decision. I will say for anyone out there with kids, no matter how much you think you know about going to an academy, it is completely different when you show up on your own.
All the stories you heard, you're like, oh, this
Yes, yeah.
that is true. I mean, anytime you go to military school, I think anything's always different. Even like regular college, I have to say,
Right.
like you always hear the stories. When it's finally that day, it's always different.
definitely a
Yeah, but
personal
military school is
experience.
definitely different.
Yeah.
A whole,
Yeah,
a
it's
whole
different.
different, a whole different experience. So, my kids always laugh about when you explain that. Like, you know, when I tell them stories, they're always like, "This explains a lot about you as a person." I'm like, "Yeah, that's true. That's probably right." But
Yeah.
so you didn't have the pressure, but the one question I had, like,
Mhm.
this is interesting. Like, was there any option for Meg to go to a different service academy, or were your parents like, if you're going Army, or
because I was interested in aviation, I did apply to the Air Force Academy. Navy was not an option.
Good.
That was not on the table. Oh, pretty campus. We're not going to school there.
We are not even walking. We are not even going there. You don't even look at that place.
No. And so I did look there. I actually was very close to going to University of Richmond for their ROTC program. But at the time, I knew service was what I wanted to do, military service. And so I did look at, like I said, University of Richmond. Holy Cross was another one. And so I also knew that I wanted a smaller school, that I didn't want to go to a school that had tens of thousands of students, and wanted a little bit more of the smaller experience. But the military service piece was definitely my choice. And it always amazed me when high school classmates said, like, wow, I can't believe you're doing that. And in my head, it was, one, it's all I know. So, you know, your dad's a doctor, you know, your mom's a lawyer. That's what you know. This is my family. Like, this is what we do. And it wasn't a pressure thing. It was part of me. It's part of my culture, to serve your country and to grow up at the same time. And so in my head too, it was like, well, yeah, you're going to go to 4 years of college, and then you have to figure out what you're doing with your life. I go to 4 years of college. I'm learning my profession while I'm there. And then I actually get to do what I've already been, you know, training to do. So it was definitely my decision. I don't know that pressure would be the right word. I never felt like I had to do it. I think I think back and that my parents would have been proud no matter what I did.
Except for the Naval Academy.
Except for the Naval Academy. Yeah, no.
No. And by the way, go Army, beat Navy. That's coming up really soon. So we'll talk about that later.
Sure.
On that note, so we've talked to Mike a couple of times, like for hours now. It's great, but
so just when they pop up, and I'm like, oh man, another 3 hours.
I have to live with them now. Well, you have to get we were talking about Mike. You have to get your conversation with him now, because if you try to talk to him on the phone, he's the most difficult person to talk to. He's like,
next.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. But you and Mike both, you know, you graduated from West Point and a year after in 2006.
Yes.
So you started at the academy
in 2002.
So right after, like Mike was there when 9/11 kicked off. You knew you were like a little bit different than Mike, that class right after, knowing what was that? I asked my question because there was that class that was there that, you know, the shit hit the fan, and then like
class as the 9/11 class.
Okay.
2006 would argue that.
Right.
Because they were already there and committed. Once you're at West Point, it's very hard to leave. Our class still had the option to not apply or not accept, you know, our acceptance. So here nor there, but
I like that. So, no, I think that's a good discussion to have, because, you know, Mike is still, he's the last person of my group of people that know that what I'm talking about. It was that you were going in, you weren't expecting what was going to happen. Your class walked in, and everybody that year that, you know, took the oath, you knew what you were getting yourself into.
Well, and my dad was at the Pentagon on 9/11, and so it rocked us.
Right.
And it was I don't remember there being a hesitation. And so I've had people ask me that of like, oh, well, you know, because you knew what you were getting into. But again, it's similar to going to an academy. You don't know what you're getting into. The
Right.
closest thing we would have had to compare it to was Desert Storm. That took 90 days.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, yeah, this is happening, but it'll be over, right?
It won't last 21 years or
years.
so,
No.
but it did. Yeah.
So yeah, it was certainly a factor, because our school, I think, is 7 miles from the DC border where I went to high school. We had my high school used to say that over 42 different languages were spoken by students there. I had a very good friend that I came home. This was pre 9/11. So showing a little bit of my childhood ignorance, but I came home and said, Mom, this kid I made friends with, he says he's Persian. Like, what does that mean? Like, where would that, you know, I've heard of Persia, like biblically kind of thing, and she said, oh, his family's from Iran. He just doesn't want to say it because of, and it was like, oh, huh, okay. Well, students like him after 9/11, like, weren't at school for 2 weeks out of fear.
Yeah.
And so it was very impactful.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like every time I talk to some of that time frame, it's like we're talking about history now, which is kind of scary. But it's always that mindset of like never like it. I don't know. For me, it was crazy because we were like hoping for something to happen, right? It was like you were sitting around and I talked to Mike about it and other guests. Is like I'm so jealous of you guys because you and gals because you were able to like. You knew what you were getting into. Like it was like you were gonna like, you know, we were talking to Mike before about showing up to a platoon that's you know, and then or you know, at a deployment or getting ready to deploy. Like we sat around for like years, like, and I just talked to one of my fellow lieutenants before he came over, and all we did was fuck around for like the train and screw around for years until something happened. But it is you know, I've never really met people that they like, oh, you know, that really changed. I've never met anybody that said, oh gosh, I was gonna go in the military, but then 9/11 happened. I said, I'm not doing that. You know, they may not want to admit it, but that's always interesting. And that class is like, I grew up there. We were talking before, so I lived at West Point for a long time. So it's kind of a different, because I always felt growing up there were people that were really into going to West Point because they wanted to serve. And there were some people that were just going there because it was free, and then somebody was making them go there. You know? And so at that point, you're right. When 9/11 kicked off, it's like now this is not a joke anymore. This isn't get you do your time and get out type thing. So, but before we get to West Point, you said yourself you were an underachiever in high school, right?
Hardly
an overachiever. I just want to throw something as we talk. You'll learn more about what we're talking about. What she does. So at the time, high school, she was the captain of 3 sports, the president of the Spanish club, and also the Spanish Honor Society, and then the class vice president. So just your normal senior year. Relaxing, a lot on your plate. Like what like that's a lot. Like, do you look back and what was in your mind?
Well, I think it's important to remember the sports were seasonal. Like,
but that's still. I mean, still every season. I mean, every season sport is a lot. I mean, if you think about it,
and it goes back to choosing what I love to do. So it's like Spanish club. I still love languages. So I participate in our church's international Bible study because I get to, throw a couple Japanese words that I know and, help them along and learn about cultures. And so that was fun for me. The being class, vice president, one of my best buds was our class president, who was a total goofball. And I helped kind of keep meetings on track and, hey, remember, we're supposed to turn this in. Whereas he made it lots of fun. And I enjoyed it and have always loved sports and been an athlete. So at the time, things like calculus were the bane of my existence, but the kind of stuff that gets put in a yearbook was fun for me.
All right. There's a lot to go on. I mean, that's a lot to have on your plate for a young kid. So then you, like we've already talked about, you head to West Point, start slacking there a little bit, right out the bat. I mean, I'm kidding around. You start right off running cross country and track. You walk on and do that.
not a little bit, a lot of bit about the difference of having a regular cadet experience as being a plebe or a freshman at West Point. And if you're on a sport, you get much better treatment, both at mealtime and are a little bit protected by your team and having practice to go to, where the upperclassmen see you as a teammate and somebody to take care of. You're not doing drill and ceremony multiple days a week.
My roommate was a football player, so we hated him because it was like he got out of so much stuff, and then I hated him a lot because I was stuck doing a lot of stuff that he couldn't. Like I didn't look, room inspection. Oh yeah, where's my roommate? I'm like, he's getting a lot more food than we are. I know this. I mean, all these crazy things.
Yeah. That to say, I didn't realize just how hard it was until I stopped running track and cross country and joined club lacrosse. Getting up and running 3 miles as your morning shakeout run, and then going through a full day of classes, and then going to practice where you're, training and running, and then trying to come back and do homework and write papers and projects, until I was doing a sport that was a lot less taxing and was a team sport where you're not competing against your own teammates. Did I realize, like, wow, that's why my first 2 years I was exhausted. And
like the sport experience is right. It's like I said before, you're already a part of a small team, but then you get even smaller, and it is either like for us, it was like you get taken care of, and you also get a little bit harassed a little bit more too sometimes by the sports player, Bill Cornell, if you're listening, in particular. But that's fine. But interesting, you go through that. You like you said, you run track and cross country, then you transition to club. And then reels, like if you're not familiar with West Point, they have to do athletics. It's not just you have a choice. So if you're not a college athlete, you have to take intramurals or doing something. So they're always keeping you busy. Make it a little bit more difficult than
there's always something.
Formations.
Right. Well, and that's why when people talk about that, to me, West Point was just high school on steroids. So instead of having 2 military parents at home, I had a TAC officer. And, or, a lot of our professors were military service members as well. And so the discipline at West Point, having 2 parents that were grads, there was some stuff that was like, Dad, how did you not warn me about whatever? And then there was other stuff that it was like, oh, like, this is normal. Of course you clean a sink like this. And why wouldn't you make hospital bed corners to make your bed?
So did they give, looking back on that, you have mom and dad who have been through it.
Yes.
What tip did mom give you, first off? Because your mom came through a hard time.
Very hard time.
Yeah. But we beat you, by the way. We had ladies at Norwich before you, by the way.
Yes. So 2 things for mom was, 1, it's hard for everybody. So 1, remember that when it's hard for you in certain ways, it's hard for everybody else too, that you're not alone in whatever the struggle is. And then 2, to remember that this isn't just college. You are going to school with the people that you are joining a profession with. Your reputation will follow you. And so to remember that who you date, how you act, who your friends are, that is all going to follow you to the Army, whether you like it or not. And people remember that. People remember how you made them feel, how you treated them, that this is not a big, huge state school where you can get lost in things. So to remember that that's going to follow you into your career.
And then for the service academies that people don't know, I think at the time, how many did you commission in the Army?
Our class was one of the smallest. I think we were maybe 700 or something. Yeah,
so it's still the largest number of, the closest thing other than that from, I think that you guys would have been Norwich at the time, maybe 100, over 100 or so. So a large number of people, the largest number of going in that class.
So West Point itself sits at, I think, about 4,000.
Yeah. So it's definitely, that's a good, good point. Yeah. My dad didn't give me any great advice like that. He was more like, don't shine your shoe. Don't let them know how to shine your shoes. Like, no. So
well,
we'll go
my
to,
dad was more
yeah,
practical.
yeah.
My dad taught, my dad taught me how to shine boots.
Right.
So we
but
shined and
I knew that too, but
yeah.
did he tell you not to do it though? My dad said play dumb a little bit. Like, don't let them know right away you can do that.
Oh no.
Because then if you in the military, if you stand out at anything, like if you start doing that stuff, they're gonna be like, what the hell's wrong?
Well,
with
so
you?
the interesting thing was my dad was a prepster. So he went to use, so I do remember now his advice was that summer, make friends with the prepsters. They've already gone through it. They're a year older than you. Some of them will have military experience at that they're not going to steer you wrong. And so sure enough, one of my best friends still was a prepster and was in my sister's squad and did look out for me, hey, don't forget this and make sure you grab that. And, they knew the kind of cadet hacks of how to shorten things. And And
the prepsters you talk about is there's a prep school at West Point. I think it's all the academies, right? They all have them? I think maybe just Army, right?
Maybe.
I don't know. Yeah, but so if you don't meet some type of criteria to get in initially or something, you get the opportunity to go to prep school for a year. And like Meg said, there's a lot of ex-military people that go with that, and they are definitely. It's basically an extra year of getting harassed, right?
Well,
a little bit.
Well, more than that.
You're
started
going,
because they have because it's only a year, they don't have upperclassmen. So they have real NCOs that are in charge of them. But they also get the extra year of academics is usually why they're there. Of that, they've been in the Army for a couple of years. They haven't been in school for a while. So to get back into study habits and learning that kind of stuff.
Getting indoctrinated to the new way of it's moved now, isn't it? Now in the prep school at part
it is.
It used to be in like New Jersey, didn't it? That's how I'm showing how old I am, right? Since now it's right on.
It's on campus. Well, just off campus, yes.
Yeah, so it's interesting. So you didn't do that. You did the real way. So you talked about aviation. So before we get into that part, we got to talk about how did you meet Mike?
How did I meet Mike? Did he tell the story?
No, we haven't.
I don't remember that from his episodes. Okay. So there we were. I was supposed to go to airborne school after my sophomore year. And it got pulled and I got an air assault slot, which I did not want because I knew that meant like it was going to be way harder. And so I was lamenting to one of Mike's classmates that I ran with of, Stephanie, how am I going to do this? And she said, oh, well, one of the guys that helped me through air assault school is in your company, Meg Kelvington. And I said, oh, hell no, I'm not asking him for help. And, what do you mean? Well, he and the way it worked at the time, the cadet first sergeants did room assignments. And so I said, he and his roommate gave us the worst room. Like, there's no way I'm talking to this guy. So I finally swallowed my pride and said, okay, hey, would you take me to the obstacle course? Stephanie said that, you helped her on some of the stuff. So we go out to West Point has their own obstacle course for air assault train up. And he did. And it was great. And we spent the entire time bad mouthing our significant others to one another. It was almost like my boyfriend is worse than your girlfriend in this way. And it's laughable now. That really is what we bonded over was the air assault train up and bad mouthing.
And how horrible your significant other. No, this obstacle course is as bad as my boyfriend who never. So is he at your boyfriend at West Point at the time, or
he was?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So I had what my roommate then called my mid-cadet crisis, and I broke up with my boyfriend, quit the cross country and track team, and changed my major like within a week of my first week of junior year.
This is one hell of an obstacle course. That was because I've seen this obstacle course. So I don't remember being that significant, like of a life changer. You know what I mean?
So we stayed in touch that summer, and like I said, we got back to school, and I broke up with my boyfriend at the time, and a few weeks later, he broke up with his girlfriend, and we both swear up and down, it wasn't for one another. It was for distinct reasons. But by second semester, so that would have been his senior year, we were dating. And so then it was hard because by spring break of senior year, he knew he was branching infantry. He knew he was stationing in Alaska. And I'm pretty sure at the time we even knew that his unit was on the patch chart to deploy. So then it was like, hey, do you really want to stay together when I graduate? Because you have another year at West Point. You want to branch aviation. Like, I don't, both of us are like, how is this going to work with you being a year ahead of me? And what I offered was my parents did it. And lots of our family friends were dual military and are, at the time we're still married, 20 plus years later. And so we made it work. And by the grace of God, aviation was slow at the time because of the deployments. And we were short staffed on instructor pilots. And so it took a long time to get through flight school because they were deploying. We didn't have enough pilots there. And so then we were, once he got back from Iraq, then able to get stationed together.
So going back to that, so if you look back at that time, I mean, I don't want to say it's not the same thing, but it's not. You're graduating, you're going to be a job being an accountant. Right. It's a little bit different when you know that like you chose your profession, you're doing this, you're now moving like a place probably not, you're not going like right down the road. There's not a lot of options. You're going this way. And then the other part about that is, we always say the needs of the Army, even after you, there's no guarantee that you're going to connect back on the backside. Because the Army doesn't really, when I was in, it was maybe it's a little bit easier when you guys were there, but it didn't seem like they gave a shit ever. It was like, if it worked out, it worked out, but sometimes it didn't.
So, and that's where it came very helpful to have parents that had gone through it to say, hey, you're going to need to decide at certain points in your career of choosing career or family. Mike and I made basically a promise to one another that we were going to geographically stay together. If it meant one or both of us, our careers taking a back seat, then we took a back seat. I realized very early on in my Army time that I was not meant to be an Army officer for life.
You're jumping ahead fast here.
Oh, my bad.
No,
where are we supposed to stay with?
I'm kidding. No, I'm joking. So what point, how quick did that realization come to you?
What's that?
That you weren't meant to be an Army officer for life?
I would say in my first assignment, really because I went fixed wing and I didn't have the small unit experience that I thought I would have. And then the fight for Mike and I to stay together with branch and assignments and that sort of thing, that was to me more stressful than it was worthwhile, of constantly having to pick and make decisions of career or staying together, and the potential bridges that you had to burn and favors you had to call in, all to stay with your spouse. It was like, I'm not asking for $1 million. I'm asking you to find me a job that allows me to stay with my husband.
Which you think would be easier than $1 million, right?
You would think, but it often wasn't.
It's the unfortunate reality of the thing. I think it's that's why I was so excited having the story, because you have such a unique story that it has to be heard. It's kind of and we're going to get into that. Because it is. It's like a hard thing to explain. Like you have two really. To go to the service academy is a big deal. To get there, it's a big deal. You have two people that are. You have to be focused on becoming an Army officer. That has to be in your mind. And then you get together with another Army officer, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit, now we have to. Well, it's the truth. Someone's gonna is gonna suffer, or you're both gonna suffer.
So I think it's worthwhile to tell the story of our engagement to marriage, if you would give me a moment on that.
It's funny. The floor.
So from starting somewhat dating at the air assault obstacle course to
Are they named that after you guys yet?
no, they should. Let's put that
We should start a
forward.
petition.
We'll have to
Petition
get
for that. We'll get a fine or something. We'll put it out there. The Kelvington obstacle course.
So we were engaged, and the plan was, because we knew he was going to deploy, to do a long engagement and get married when he got back. And then he had a very heartfelt talk with me that summer and said, hey, the Army doesn't recognize fiancés. So if something happens to me, I want to ensure you're taken care of. Like, basically, I think we should get married. What do you think about that? And I said, well, yeah, but could we just like do a justice of the peace and then do the big wedding when you get home? So we brought that idea to our parents. Both sets of parents nixed that and said, yeah, you can do a quick small wedding before he deploys, but you're doing it in a church. And my parents are Catholic and said, it doesn't have to be in a Catholic church, but it's going to be by a man of the cloth of some sort. So let's figure this out. So that was in July. That was July 4th weekend. And we got married September 15th. So I planned our wedding via the phone with my mother-in-law while I was in airborne school.
No, those barracks are shitty barracks.
So luckily there was, we had internet of trying to email whatever back and forth. And it really got to the point because airborne school is not Ranger school, don't get me wrong, but it was long days and I was tired, that I remember having conversations like, look, I don't care. Pink roses, some baby's breath, call it good. She's like, but Megan, this is your wedding. And this is my mother-in-law I'm talking, and then, talking to my parents and my dad, and my mom, both, are you sure you don't want whatever? And it's like, look, people, it's one day, like, it'll be great. I'm sure you guys have it taken care of. Like, so we got married on Mike's block leave. We joke that like we do everything that the Army tells you not to do, of like, don't rush marriage, don't make any big decisions on block leave.
We're just doing it our own way.
Right, exactly. So we got married on his block leave. He deployed 2 weeks later, which was the first day I started. There was a program back then called BOLIC 2. And so they brought together lieutenants from all commissioning sources to either Fort Benning or to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to do basic soldier skills. So I started on October 1st at Fort Sill when he was getting on a plane to Iraq, and still remember like stepping out of line to take the last phone call and then getting reamed by a sergeant first class for being on my cell phone in uniform. And I'm breaking down crying. And, one of my classmates is then having to tell this sergeant first class, like, hey,
chill out.
Her husband just got on a plane to Iraq. And then all of a sudden he, becomes my best friend.
My bad. Yeah.
So that was the start to our marriage, was me starting Army training and him deploying to Iraq.
My wife's probably going to kill me.
What's that?
But I have a very similar experience.
Oh yeah.
So hopefully the one person we've been hiding from for a long time doesn't hear this, but she's going to kill me anyways. But no, it goes back to what you said. So the Army doesn't recognize spouses.
Right.
So my wife and Jan had moved down to Texas and was living together. And my company commander was an old school prior enlisted Ranger Regiment guy. Yeah. And he was very open about how he felt about Class B dependents and all this kind of stuff. And it was very rough. It was like at a point of like, aside from how the culture was, because what I'm talking about, was like, they didn't care. They don't care. What I mean? I'd be like, hey,
they don't issue.
I'd be like, hey, I got to get off early because my girlfriend, has some professional work thing. Well, he'd be like, your girlfriend, I don't give a shit about your, like,
issue you a spouse.
Yeah. Oh yeah. All this crazy stuff. So we decided to,
if you needed a spouse,
so I was like, the same thing of like, and you're training, you're doing the stuff. You're like, if something happens to me, I wanted her to be the first person that knows. I didn't
Right.
want it to go through my parents.
Right.
So we decided, my dad doesn't know this either. No, I'm joking. He knows about it. Sorry. That'd be great. Breaking it down. But we decided to do the Justice of the Peace thing.
Okay.
So it was like, we just do it. And I was actually running a range, a 9mm range that day. I was the OIC range. So at Hood, you had these shutdowns because it got so hot in the summertime.
Okay, right.
So we literally at the shutdown, we bolted, like changed, got married at the Justice of the Peace, rush back, throw back on a uniform, get, everybody in my pictures are all in uniform,
Yeah.
right back to the range. We're running the range, and I look down and I'm like, I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, holy Christ, I just got married. Like, and they're like, what? Someone's like, what? I'm like, none of the NCOs, they're like, what? I'm like, I just got married. They're like,
What are you doing here?
well, it was just one of those things we kept, and Jana's Catholic, so it was
Okay.
like, it was important to her family, but, and we'll talk more about your faith and as we
Right.
go along, but like, that was funny because when we were talking about getting married in the Catholic Church,
Right.
Jana was super nervous about this. So
Okay.
I remember telling the priest, they were like, she's like, I have to tell you something. And he was like looking at, and Father Hill was like looking at us like, what? And Jana didn't want to say it. He's like, are you pregnant? He was like, just very open, like, are you pregnant? And she's like, no. And I'm like, Father, we got married in the Justice Peace. He's like, don't worry about that. That's not
Piece
the
of
eye of the
paper,
church. Yeah,
noted.
that doesn't mean anything. That's not the eye of the church. That, and it was just like, let her go. And I'm like, it was just such. I'm like, it should be no, but it was, yeah. So there's one person I think our family doesn't know that. Hopefully she doesn't hear this. So, I'm sorry, Auntie M. I'm sorry, but it's I think it's an important story to tell because it is how it is,
Right.
For some people, and,
Yeah.
and you have that. So we were able to plan. We weren't planning it as quickly as you were, but
Right.
it was like now you plan a real wedding and then trying to keep it secret that you were, we were coming home, like take off your ring and be like, oh, but
Well,
it was
we
offered
didn't have to do that because we basically made a deal with our parents that, hey, and our parents making the deal with us. My dad
Yeah.
was like, hey, do this one. You have all of your grandparents there, which complete God moment that he had us do that because by the time, 3 years later, we got around to doing what we call our party wedding. My grandfather had passed. And so having that first wedding in a church where I'm wearing my wedding dress, my dad's giving me away, my grandfather was there for that. So it meant a lot. And it's funny because my parents will joke around May every time of like, hey, shouldn't your second anniversary be coming up? And it's like, no. We only actually recognize the first one in September because we do consider the second one our party wedding.
Yeah, but we were different too. Like we knew we were having a big wedding after, so it wasn't like it was just keeping it quiet from so many people. Because like all of our military friends were like, do not say a word. Like do not when you go to the wedding, like do not say a word. Don't be like, oh, I was at their first wedding. No, just. You don't know what the so it'd be interesting. I think Jana's pulled some of the pictures about it, but in your mind, it's crazy to be like we left the range.
Right.
Went to the county, went to Bell County.
Yeah.
You're back. It's just like, what did we just do? It's crazy. But so are we ready for our first drink break here? I got prep.
Yes.
So we have another first here. It's the first time we featured wine. You like just making you're making it a little bit difficult to research. I'm not a sommelier, but look at it.
Well, I'm not either.
But you made me like prepare to like Mike's like, should you bring wine? I'm like,
oh, you're gonna have more info on it than I do. I just have a friend that sells it and know that I like it. So
I hope
don't start quizzing me on it.
Have more info.
But
I'm trying to figure out this, and I'm kind of embarrassed because I've never used this one. I try to look important. I've always used the pop down one.
Yeah,
but
we have to
everyone's
get
like
it on
watching
the
me.
lip.
I just don't want to get all of myself, I prepped it early. You guys didn't see that? I was trying to be. Here we go. All right, cool. And we got wine glasses here. Look at this. This is so fancy.
So fancy.
This is the fanciest we've ever been down here.
Oh, they do. Oh.
There we go.
Our research assistant here. All 4 academies have prep schools.
Oh, look at that.
Good to know.
Would you look at that? And we got wine too to celebrate it. It looks a little light. I feel like we gotta be like, oh, I was supposed to give you the cork, wasn't I? The whole like have you smell the cork?
You're beyond me. That's okay.
Like,
this is what I like.
No. But we're drinking. We're drinking Dove Hunt Dog Pinot Noir from 2021. That sounds so fancy, I should say. But this is from Scout and Cellar Winery, which is located in Farmers Branch, Texas. It was founded in 2017 by Sarah Sadinix. You know how she pronounced it? Does that sound right? Sadinix, who's a former attorney who turned her passion into wine into becoming a wine grower. She's dedicated her life right now to making really natural wines. So what's interesting about them, it's always fun when you do research. It's all joking aside. You do find out something that you like. This is kind of crazy, but Scout and Cellar, they have their proprietary standard for creating and delivering the highest quality, most delicious wine possible in accordance with its own non-negotiable benchmarks for sustainability, production, and pesticide use. When they launched in 2017, they were looking at the beverage industry to see if there was any type of like certifications that existed to what they wanted to do. They found out that nothing dove as deep as they wanted. So what do? You create your own thing. So they created their own standard called the Clean Crafted Commitment. And it's one of the most rigorous wine growing standards in the entire industry. It's rooted under three key pillars. One, the wine made using grapes grown without the use of anything artificial, which when I was reading this, it starts getting into like a little bourbonish. I was like, I can relate to this. Wine must be produced without artificial processing, aids, or ingredients like bourbon, including added sugar. And then the wine must not contain more than 100 ppm of sulfites. And so this is the Dove Hunt Dog Pinot Noir 2021. It's sourced from 4 coastal vineyards throughout California. It's fermented for 14 to 20 days, and then it's aged briefly on oak for 8 weeks. So
good to know.
Enjoy it. Now you know. We'll drink it. Cheers.
Cheers.
It's our first wine experience. I like it. So fancy.
I'm making a mess over here trying to drink with my left hand.
That's actually pretty good. It's lighter. It's a lot lighter for a red wine than I like red wine. I'm a big red wine guy, so it's a lot lighter than I thought it'd be.
Yeah, it's not
like refreshing. I mean, it's not that.
Yes, there's no big tannin bite at the end, right?
I mean, I still have to say I prefer bourbon though. It's okay, but we're fine. You guys gonna try some wine or what? Notice how they're all. Usually, if it's bourbon, they're all jonesing to try it. You can hand it to the savages there, though. They'll try a little bit. So let's rewind a little bit. You know, you talked a little bit about, getting in, the appointment, first appointment stuff for Mike. But let's we're gonna try to concentrate back on Team Meg. Okay. Right. Mike's already had enough time. All right. Enough about Mike. No, I'm kidding. But so aviation. Let's talk about branch aviation. A little bit different than normal aviators for the Army. So everybody in the Army kind of, if you think about an Army aviator, you think about helicopters, right? That's the number one thing. So you were fixed wing.
Why is Black Hawk first?
Black Hawk first.
Yeah, so you still have to do helicopters first.
But did you are you able to pick the fixed wing? Or is that after you were already
after Black Hawk? So sure about that. It was my dad that helped me with that, because in flight school, we're getting done with, you start out flying a TH-67, which is a Bell Jet Ranger, similar to what news crews fly, the smaller ones. So you learn to fly on that, and then you pick your advanced aircraft, and it's order of merit, what's available, start at the top. So in the initial training, my dad's whispering the whole time, hey, find out about fixed wing. And I'm going, Dad, no one knows anything about fixed wing here. I've talked to the warrant officers. And he's like, yeah, it's like the best kept secret of the Army that we have these fixed wing. And he's like, I'm telling you, yes, Black Hawks was great, but you don't like the field. You don't like that stuff. You need to look at fixed wing. And so I finally did what lieutenants at flight school are not supposed to do and called my branch manager, which my dad told me then, make sure you tell Miss Twyford that you're Kulu's daughter. And I'm like, what? And he's like, Miss Twyford, my dad was a branch manager for either captains or majors when Miss Twyford was still the lieutenant's aviation branch manager. And so she was still there as my branch manager.
For years and years. Yeah.
Yes. So I call and say, hi, Miss Twyford, this is Lieutenant Kelvington, but my maiden name's Kulingowski. Oh, you're Kulu's daughter. I knew you were at flight school. I've been waiting to see your paperwork. And, what can I do for you, baby girl? And I said, well, ma'am, my dad keeps talking about fixed wing, but everyone I ask at flight school says lieutenants can't do it. They don't know about it, that it's reserved for senior warrant officers. And she said, well, that's true on the VIP side. So Army has 2 types of fixed wing units. And so that was the VIP side, that it really was reserved for more senior officers. And so she told me pick Blackhawks because that'll be the only aircraft we're ever over strength. And then when you select a post, instead of writing a post as your first choice, select fixed wing. And that will signal at branch to alert that you want a fixed wing slot. So that's what I did. And then I did my helicopter, my Blackhawk time. And when it came time to post out of Blackhawks, I wrote fixed wing, which you would think getting that from branch would maybe trickle down that was a thing. Of course not. I still got spoken to of, hey, what kind of crap are you trying to pull, not putting a post down? And I said, well, no, I did put a post down. I put Hunter Army Airfield, which is where I want to fly fixed wing. And anyway, it got worked out. And so I ended up staying.
So you found out about the secret. You're not supposed to know about it. So I think they know about it, but they're just not supposed to. They have to know about it, right?
They do, except it, again, like we talked about before, based on needs of the Army, changes of how they want fixed wing to operate. If they want lieutenants in those units, or if they want you to do a tactical aviation assignment and then come back to the fixed wing side of things, because it is so unique and different.
So flight school up to your Blackhawk qualifications, how long is that about?
Let's see, I started in December of 2006 and I finished in April of 08. No, is that right? 07. So it was about a little over a year and a half. And then I did SEER school. You do BOLIC after that. And then I had a little bit of a break and then did the fixed wing transition.
How long was the fixed wing transition?
That was a couple of months. And then you have to go out to Arizona and do the intel side. And so then that would have been in fall of 08. I went out to Arizona and did you learn the mission set then, the intel mission.
All right. So it's always funny you're the first person I've ever met that's done that route. It's so funny. It's pretty unique for me. I was like, holy cow, that's cool. But it's one of the RC, was it RC-12? The guardrail, right?
Yes.
So, and it's a military MI collecting aircraft, right?
Yes. So I call it the unicorn of the Army because of just that reason, that you'll run into people and people only know about it if they have deployed, because we have no mission stateside. And on deployment, you are collecting at the time, things may have changed, but at the time, because we didn't have actionable intelligence, we were more intel web building. Our information, it didn't get sent to like a ground force commander. So it helped build in the larger units information.
The question about Blackhawk RC-12, what's harder, easier to fly?
Fixed wing for sure. Yeah.
What's more enjoyable to you?
That's a good question.
I feel like you're like the action person to have. If like the shit hits the fan, we just go to like an airport. You can jump in whatever's there and fly us out of there. It's
maybe
like
15
there's a helicopter.
Years ago.
You don't think you can do it now? Just start pushing some buttons like MacGyver and get us out of there? No.
I mean, if we had to, yeah. I mean, collective, cyclic, it all works the same.
There's some TikTok stuff keeping the bearing,
right,
even or whatever. So
and the Blackhawk was great. At flight school, I got to fly the Ranger mission, which is at the time every other Blackhawk class. You got to go pick up the Rangers and Ranger School and fly them for their air assault mission. And so you had to plan your flight and whatever. We tried to make them like the chow bird though. So at flight school, we would buy as much McDonald's, Little Debbie's, drinks that we could and throw it in the back for them, because it was the one and only time at flight school you got to have people that you were actually flying, which was both thrilling and scary as all get out, because it wasn't just you, your stick buddy, and your IP anymore. You actually had passengers. Which is really cool to like look back and see of like, wow.
I think you guys get over that very quickly, because I think it becomes a rush of fucking with everybody behind there. There must be a part where it changes, where you're worried, and then all of a sudden you're like, you know what?
Let's give him a ride.
Watch this, everybody.
The neat thing with flying fixed wing though is because you do fly so much higher that there's no other sensation like that.
I still remember flying with a female warrant, and there was another guy, but she was a warrant officer, and we were flying like nappy there, and it was just like you just know it is there, and like you got on the radio, I'm like, hey, like how, like, can we get any lower as a joke? And like the other pilots just looked back and they're like, we could, and then the one officer, she was like, is everybody afraid back there? I'm like, I think so. I think we are. I mean, I feel like we could. This thing goes higher, doesn't it? You know what I mean? But that's that. I feel like you guys have a change of everything. Like I think you felt that way when the helicopter jumps at Bragg. I feel like you enjoyed messing with people back there, but it's
Well, and I think fixed wing is different. I relate it that an airplane actually wants to fly. You are having to make a helicopter fly.
Right.
There is no glide distance with glide ratio for a helicopter. I mean, things go wrong, like you're just coming down. Whereas with a plane, that was one of the neat things you learn. You learn to fly on a Cessna. They kill the engine. Well, you've got miles that you just turn into a glider. And so for me, that was a comforting thing to go from a helicopter where like, hey, you're auto rotating and you're just coming down, versus an airplane that, hey, if you lose an engine or two, it's okay. Like you got this. And, part of your emergency procedures are how to handle that. So
you miss flying at all?
Not really. No, I do miss, like I said at the beginning, of like on certain cloudy days of like, it used to be so cool to pop up above the clouds, and miss that. It was very stressful for me. Between having your regular Army job that you're managing and then keeping up with the standards of being a pilot, I didn't get the bug that a lot of pilots get. No.
And then also being like, the situation with your family and, with Mike, and
yes,
there's a lot of other things that get.
Yeah, there was a few other things.
But I mean, like looking back, now that you're through that, though, the stress part of like, is there ever thought of you like, it'd be nice to go up and fly just for fun?
There was for a hot minute. I got recruited living here to go fly for a small aviation element. Unfortunately, in the Army, I took the FAA test being a fixed wing pilot. And so I had my certification. So that would have just been a renewal process. I never did it flying fixed wing. And so in going back through paperwork, would have had to completely redo all that training. And at this point in life, that was not exactly worth it.
I mean, that's so much free time, though. I mean, you got so
much free time.
Yeah, you got I mean, I don't see why you couldn't have thrown that. Just throw that in the mix. But
yes.
So like I said, first person I've met, like first fixed wing Army pilot I've ever met.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I just don't see it. Yeah, I've never like. I mean, you know about them, but you never like really meet them. It's it's like the same people. Like the same people like the Army has tugboats. You're like, what? All these like weird things. Like what? No, that's crazy. Yeah, here I am. You're like, I'm here. So your first assignment, we're moving along, but because we'll get through the military stuff as fast as you want to get through it. But you head to Hunter Army Airfield.
Yes.
You actually do your one and only deployment to Afghanistan.
Yes.
What was that like?
What was it like? It's hard depending on point of reference. I downplayed a lot given who I'm married to. It was 4 months, and a lot of it was on a spectrum of things based on where I had come from, was intense. At the same time, I lived on Kandahar Airfield. I lived in a CHU for deployment status. It was easy living conditions. The hardest thing for us was trying to get chow because we didn't, flexing times and figuring out which chow halls were open and that sort of stuff. But then having real world stuff of, the first time your chaff goes off and it's like, what was that? Oh, well, we must have gotten, something must have shot at us, but it's all right. It's good. The chaff got it. It's like, what? You're flying with these.
What are we talking about?
Yeah, you're flying.
I don't know what you're talking about right now. I'm kidding.
Well, you're flying with senior warrant officers that have flown tactically, and so they've, really been shot at.
They're like, just relax.
Yeah, they're like, Captain, it's okay. Like, we're flying at 30,000 feet. Like, there's not much that can hit us, but they obviously see something and they're trying, like, simmer down over there. Control the radios and shut up.
And I'll let you land if you were going.
Yeah. And then the one time my one fun deployment story is we came into land and the tower tells us that the airfield's closed. Like, what do you mean the airfield's closed? Like, we're at bingo fuel. It's night. We have nowhere else to land. Well, there's an operation going in Kandahar City. We had to shut the airfield down. I'm like, well, you're going to either need to open it or call up QRF because you're going to have 2 pilots crash land in the desert. And all we have are 9 mils. So let's
see what's going on here.
Options. So it was, very quickly us doing small racetrack patterns on the approach and they turned the lights on for us.
Yeah, they're like, wait, I think we have a good idea for this.
Let's make an exception.
So where was Mike during this time?
When I was deployed?
Yeah.
In the next province over. Deployed.
Yeah, that's what I thought. You guys were both the same thing.
Yes. So that was another element of emotional stress was I was the S2 for our element, and so was constantly monitoring things and having red line access, and so knowing what was going on and knowing, sometimes I wished I were a more ignorant Army wife and could just live with no news is good news, because often having all the news then, would get me spun up of, hey, before we go fly, do you mind if I call my husband's unit and find out if he was on that most recent mission? Was very hard to just, luckily for me, our mission set was, here's where we need you to fly, go out and fly it. We'll call you if we need you to change. And, flying racetrack patterns, we were paid for what we could do in case of emergency. If there was no emergency, it was fairly easy to get up and fly. But the emotional stress of having him deployed at the
I mean, that's something that I think, that's why I think your story is, I don't think I know, this is why it's super unique. And I think we laugh about it, right? You're smiling about it, but Meg mentioned S2, that's intelligence people. She's read in to be able to understand what's going on operational wise, and to have a husband that is on the tip of the spear doing that. I mean, how much of your so just to hear what you're saying, most of your emotional stress was worrying about Mike, not really about what you were doing.
Oh yes, for sure, 100%. Yes, and because Ranger Regiment was the tip of the spear, and there was no off nights. I mean, unless weather was just hellacious, you knew there were guys going out. And so even if it wasn't him, one of, someone we knew or associated with, it's a lot different than.
So how did you handle that, honestly? What was your,
I worked out a lot.
Okay.
Mike and I both look at pictures prior to that deployment, because there is a little bit of a morbid nature, going to deployment, and that we did a lot of unhealthy behavior of it's Savannah, you're drinking, you're going out a lot. And so, I mean, I think I lost like 15 pounds in those 3 or 4 months I was deployed, because it was like, well, I guess I'll go for another run, walk to the gym and go for another run. Was a lot of how I handled it. And then it was actually when the book, A Purpose-Driven Life, had come out just before that. And so I was reading that book, and it was, I don't know if it was a devotional or what it was, but at least kept my mind focused on bigger things than what was happening day to day. Yeah.
I'm in awe of you for being able to deal with that. Honestly, it's in both you and Mike about having, that going on at the same time. For, it's different when you're there and then your wife or husband somewhere back in a safe place, and knowing that, I think you're downplaying a little bit about what you were doing. Like a lot of things, anything in the military can go bad very quickly.
Yes. Well, and I think a lot of it was my upbringing, when I was just talking to a friend today about it. When I was in middle school for 7th and 8th grade, my dad was a aviation battalion commander, and his aviation was the Blackhawks that were getting digitized and upgraded. So Task Force 21, it was on the Facebook page. Yeah. That was his aviation unit.
Such a great time.
So he did 6 NTC rotations in 2 years. And my mom kept going. She was my PTO president at middle school, helped in my sister's kindergarten class, had friends, and life went on. There is an element to, we'll talk about it later, of what I do now I joke with my crochet pickles that you just have to deal with it. You don't, there's the shadow side of it. And at the same time, I choose to
you left the pickle over there. Dan.
Oh, no.
You left your pickle off screen. Holy cow.
My next
It's right there by the, holy cow. That's what she's talking about. Just deal with it. We'll talk more about it, but the pickle's a lot bigger in person than the pictures.
Well, there's different sizes. They're terrible.
No, it is true, because I was like, oh, no. But what's we get? You want to talk? What you want? We'll wait for a deal thing, because it's ties into something else. We're not there. We need more wine.
More wine before we
get to the just deal with it. Yeah, but you want more wine? You good? Okay, she's good. So you get back from deployment. You and Mike both. You both had to, which is a story he's told. So I don't know if we have to tell that story, but how it goes. But it's funny. I feel like I know your guys' thing. So Meg is actually one of the first few women to go to the maneuver captain's career course at Fort Benning, now Fort Moore, and the first one to do it pregnant. But Mike said
the first one to do it pregnant.
Yeah, so that's a big deal. Yeah. Another first here, first wine, first. So isn't it funny that I know? I feel like I know, like when I was doing the bio, I'm like, I already know that. We can block.
Well, we skipped my real first, was that I'm the first woman to have both parents as West Point graduates.
Are you really? Mm-hmm. You just wasted an hour to drop that in?
I don't know how you didn't find that in your research. There's a whole article.
Well, yeah.
You're slacking on your research, man.
Well, yeah, you were.
You took too much time looking at pictures.
Yeah. And of the dill pickle, but no, Meg is actually, that's pretty funny that she's bringing it, because there's some pictures I posted. Meg gave me Mike gave me a lot of pictures, a lot of pictures of you guys together, which is cool. And what I'm wanted to make sure is that this is like Meg's day, right? So like a lot of the pictures like you sent to was like you with the kids, and then but not a lot of military stuff. So I'm like, I get on Meg's Facebook and start stalking her. So I start surely I'll find some pictures of Meg in uniform, and then I'm down to 6,000. I'm like, oh my God, just going 7,000, and it takes a long time for those to update you. But most of the pictures are you with somebody else in uniform. So I dig through and I find finally some pictures of her in Kandahar. But before we went on the air, Meg's like, I talked to Mike about he gave me this picture. So I'm like, no, what did Mike say that I did my research?
Yeah,
I basically stalk you. I'm getting there. I'm but I was down to 8,000. I'm like, you know what? Forget it. I'm done with looking at Meg's pictures. But no, I didn't know that. That's pretty significant. Has it happened since?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay.
There was women in the class either a year or two after me too as well. And there was men in Mike's class. So he has two classmates that both of their parents.
So what branch was mom?
She was Intel and
Okay.
my dad was aviation.
So
I
you're like
I
merged.
found
Look, oh,
the
look
two.
at that.
Yeah, isn't
That
that
merge.
awesome? Yeah.
Merged together.
Yeah.
Okay. So what did your dad fly?
Blackhawks.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Yep.
much better pilot than you then, probably, right?
My dad?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. I was not great. I'll be honest. Like, wasn't my forte.
Like I don't really like this. So if you wouldn't have got like, you only picked Blackhawk because the fixed wing element.
No,
right?
I mean I went to flight school to fly Blackhawks.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was your choice.
The
If it didn't
yeah.
work out. Okay.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
good. I didn't think I hope it wasn't. You want to be like a Chinook person or something else, but, which is cool. So you go to the maneuver course. That's that's what's that? I mean, what's that like going through first few women and pregnant? Is that are you getting some like?
Well, first it was the battle with aviation branch to let me go there because it was like, hey, you did no tactical time and now you want to go to an alternate career course. And my argument was like, well, hey, you're right. I've done no tactical time. So why not send me to the maneuver career course where I can learn about the basics? And it took infantry branch stepping in to say, keep these guys together and let them come to the maneuver career course.
Yeah, because Mike is charity. Mike almost pulled the plug.
Yes. Right? And it was actually General Ferreter, who was the head of infantry at the time at Fort Benning, who is now the director at the National Veterans Memorial Museum. He is the one that signed it to get us both there.
He's like, knock it off. We're doing this.
Yes. Yeah. And it was great. And there was two women in the class ahead of me that had just gone through that. They were PsyOps and CA. And then I came through as aviation. And one of my arguments at the time was that aviation is a maneuver element. We are part of maneuver. And so we went there and it was a great experience because it was neat for me to hear some of their experiences of like, oh my gosh, I know guardrail. We used to use, some of your your tips. And so that was interesting. And then it was helpful to have someone that knew kind of the higher level, when we were planning the missions at the end, that kind of knew how some of that stuff worked. And I was mind blown because I didn't know the first thing about ConOps and having to learn all that stuff. One of our family planning things was I insisted I have a deployment before we have a first child. That at the time in the Army, I didn't want to be a slick sleeve and a mom, that I wanted to have a deployment, just the immediate clout.
So tell everybody what a slick sleeve means.
So a slick sleeve is you wear your deployment patch on your right shoulder. And if you don't have one, it makes you a slick sleeve.
No, it's not a good look.
Not at the time when it was the surge and
exactly.
Everyone was deploying. And I showed up at my unit as a lieutenant, but was quickly promoted to captain because I had spent so much time at flight school. So to be a captain walking around without a deployment patch felt
they were like,
shameful.
what is wrong? Like, what is wrong with it?
Do you have do you have a medical issue? Like, why do you not have a deployment? So going to the career course, it is popular for female aviators to get pregnant at the career course because it's the one time you're not in a flying position.
Right.
So it's not counted against your, they're not supposed to hold it against you, but it's not counted against you. So by the grace of God, timing worked out. And I was 6 months pregnant when I finished the career course. And I tried to convince them to like, hey, can I just wear ACUs to graduation? Or, can we just do the diploma? And it was no, you need a dress uniform and you will walk the stage. So I spent, and I remember this, my $242 on that maternity dress uniform that I wore 2 times. It is not a track. It's called a smock.
It's the word. Yeah,
it is.
It's not the. That's like. I would like to be in the planning room of when they decided to come up with that and be like, we need to have a uniform that we're going to make them wear. I'm like, it just doesn't. I get it, but it just doesn't.
There's
It's
no
not a
way
good
of
look.
making that. No.
It's not a good look. It's like the
No.
old, it's the only worst is that the old Army black raincoat. I feel like it's like that looks good on no one. You know what I mean?
But yeah, the career course was great. It was humbling to hear our classmates' experiences and what people had been doing the last few years. We met great people there that we're still friends with because you finally had 6 months where you weren't deploying. And Mike, with being in Ranger Regiment, was either training or gone a whole lot. So 6 months of us living under the same roof, reconnecting before we go to the 82nd.
So let's talk about that for real, because there's a lot, the op tempo is going on for a lot of people that they don't understand is a lot of us got used to not being around.
Yes.
When you come back, there's a reconnection or
a
reprogramming. Yeah. So was that rough for you guys at all, or were you
not? So it was rough when we lost friends,
right.
and that he in particular, the emotions surrounding that and the disbelief from both of us, of not knowing what to do with that and how to handle that. And the Army Resiliency Program was in its infancy at the time, so there wasn't talk of mental health or emotional well-being.
Let's stop there, because I heard you talk about that today. I have never heard of that. So
what's that?
The Army Resiliency Program. So so you got to.
Yes.
I think this is an important thing, especially what Patriot's mission is.
Right.
What is this?
So it was a program started, I believe, in maybe 2008, maybe a little bit before that, out of University of Pennsylvania. The positive psychology department there partnered with the Army to create a program that could be a train the trainer and then implemented back into Army units with NCOs and officers trained as resiliency trainers. Unfortunately, like most mandatory Army training, it became okay, we have to do this once a quarter, look at this slideshow. For the trainers that internalized it can be life-changing, because there are elements in there that you can use in your day-to-day life, that it doesn't have to be crisis type of thing. I tried to get into it 3 different times with 2 different battalion commanders that told me no for different reasons as a captain. And so then I was finally able to go as a spouse in 2020.
How long is it?
It's a 2-week course.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know, it's crazy what you learn. I heard you talk about that. I'm like, I've never even heard about this program, but like anything like military training, the mandatory training, I don't think that's one of those things that I smile about it, but it's like that definitely shouldn't be the mandatory training stuff. Well,
and because our world and our view on resilience has changed and mental health has changed. I can't speak to it now because we're not in a regular Army unit to see how it's working. But I would dare to say people are taking it more seriously.
Yeah, they have to be. I mean, if not, then there's been a bigger problem that we're not aware of. But so you and Mike both head to the 82nd.
Yes.
Good old I'll never say Fort Liberty, but Fort Bragg. I mean, it's the word. But head there 2011, 2013.
Yes.
That's the picture. One of the pictures you with the firstborn there.
McKinley,
in uniform, great pictures, running around.
Yeah. Which I distinctly remember. I mean, I can feel her in like the Velcro pushing into me kind of thing. And being in that unit was the hardest job in the Army, and the job I'll always cherish, because it was real world taking care of paratroopers and their families.
And so the job of Rear D, you were doing the
Yes.
Rear D
So I went there to be the brigade assistant aviation officer, which I did for a few months. And then Mike was a company commander in the same brigade. And so I was on the spouse side of things, helping run his FRG.
Okay.
I think at the time, we had to fight for me to get a slot to brag, and especially then a fight to get a slot in 4th Brigade because they were deploying and I was pregnant. And again, they're not supposed to hold that against you, but it was like,
there's a lot of things they're not supposed to hold against you,
yeah.
but they do, yeah.
Are you sure you want to go to this unit? Are you sure? And at the time, having not been a mom, to me, it was, well, she's going to be 6, they give you they don't deploy you before 6 months postpartum. So it was like, well, hey, she'll be 6 months old. We'll be partway through the deployment. I'll do part of the deployment. And when I come back, she'll be just under a year. She's never going to remember it. My parents have already said that they would take her for us. So to me, again,
I just love hearing you say this out loud because it is. If anyone's listening to this, like, to me, it's like, this totally makes sense. Anybody that's listening, what you just said in the past minute is complete insanity. All joking aside, like,
I realize
in your mind,
that
yeah,
now,
no, I
but
mean,
in my
but
mind,
this is important.
it was
Yeah, no,
very
I get, yeah,
logical.
and I'm trying to, like, I've been so excited for this because I was hoping you would say things like this, which are, yeah, it's no big deal. We're going to both go to a unit. One of the most deployable units, other than the Ranger Regiment that deploys all the time. We're going to the same brigade. I just need a little bit of time to figure out this new, motherhood thing, and then we're going to deploy our parents. Like that is, yeah. I mean, you've been together like what, like 6, like you and Mike are together 6 months. You've been doing all these other deployments. Now you're going to a new assignment, which, again, everybody, we play this off. That's a big deal. Like every time you go there, a new place, new people, new thing, and you have a 6-month-old, and you're talking about like just life is it's just normal for us. It's still normal for the Kelvingtons, right?
It seemed normal when I was pregnant and she wasn't with us.
Right.
It was on my maternity leave that I started realizing, what did I think was going to be okay about this? I go back to work and they were very gracious at work. All the guys I worked with in the office had kids, and I'm, hey, ma'am, like, what are you still doing? It's 4:00. Like, take off. There's nothing you need to still be doing here. And so they were wonderful. Then it came time to start packing bags. And I'm packing a duffel bag and I'm crying, going, Mike, I can't do this. What were we thinking? And he's like, babe, you're going to get on rear detachment. They're going to get you. And so, well, then different rear detachment positions started to be announced, and I wasn't one of them.
You're like,
and I
don't hear.
I wasn't one of them. And all of a sudden, I go to my aviation officer and say, hey, sir, I've got to get on rear detachment. And he's going, Meg, I need you forward. We're already short. I'm going, I can't do it. I don't know what to tell you, but I can't deploy. And so between he and Mike, they encouraged me to talk to our brigade XO. So I went and talked to him and said, sir, got on his calendar for an office call and said, sir, I'll take whatever job you need. Like, I'll do whatever you want, but I can't deploy. Like, I can't do it. And he said, okay, well, we've been talking about this and here's the deal.
Brings out the envelope with a big old.
Yeah.
We've been waiting for this, Meg.
Yeah.
No.
We need an HHC company commander. We need a brigade XO. And we're going to need you to sign for all that property.
You're like, when do I start? No.
And so again, at the time, yeah.
That sounds like a good idea.
Okay, when do we do layouts? Sure. With a daughter and being the FRG leader for Mike's company and my husband being deployed. Again, just, if there's any runners out there, you get to like start a race and it's like, well, sounded like a good idea at the time.
Been there, yeah, many times, yeah.
So that is what I did. Was as a captain, I was the Rear Detachment Brigade XO, and I was the HHC Rear Detachment Company Commander, which meant all replacements were processed through us. The brigade staff having to work with battalion, Rear Detachment battalion staffs. Also being one of my main jobs was casualty tracking. And so working with the chaplain and the medical side. And then at the time, the Army still had a wonderful program called an MFLAC, which was a military family life consultant. So they were licensed counselors that were able to do short-term counseling. So working with her to take care of our paratroopers and families for those months.
This is tying into a lot of things that you and I, as my soul sister, are.
Yes. So you can imagine the moral injury that came out of having, because again, it ties back to my deployment,
right,
of knowing too much all the time. I mean, every red line message and every casualty track in where's the body, as the family being notified, everything from a toe stub injury and is he back on the battlefield to when's the plane getting to Dover? Does the family have everything they need?
And then on top of that, having a husband that's also deployed, that when you read that could be him and not just, a friend or somebody you don't know. So always, definitely, this is like some deep stuff here. Like we'll have to talk about this off camera.
We may need a counselor on staff if we get too deep into
We're gonna be like, no, but I mean, this is why I think it's amazing. Like your story is amazing. Like I hope people are really listening. I think you have to. I challenge anybody that's listening now to go back and listen and kind of digest what you're saying, because I think I'm feeling it really hard because I've been there before and but it's on a layer of like. That I can't if I'm being realistic, I don't know how you survive that. I don't know how you survive new motherhood, your husband's deployed, all this heavy responsibility. And not that, and this is what's different. My wife wasn't working at the time. Right. Like a lot of spouses aren't working. They're doing the FRG and not to make fun of the FRG, but the FRG is they're not thrust into it. There's not all these responsibilities that you're talking about. There's a lot of, you had a lot of fucking shit going, like part of my language going on. That I don't like. Where were you? Where were you at? Like, where was Meg at? Like, what was getting you to survive every day?
Everyone around me that I had that military. Carol is still somebody I talk to, my military family life consultant. Mm-hmm. I had Army wife friends that, like you're saying, they weren't working. So when our nanny quit last minute, and I was able to have multiple people on speed dial to say, hey, can you take McKinley for the day? That I had those people that I relate it to like a fire extinguisher. Like you need one because something bad is bound to happen at some point. And even if it never does, knowing it's there. Yeah. And that was what I had. I had, our public affairs officer who was deployed, but one of my friends that, I could email high side with and check in with, and just multiple people around. I had a great rear detachment staff for the most part. I'm still in touch with one of the guys that was a short-term rear detachment S3. I'm still in touch with our sergeant major because we were all in it together. I wasn't on an island, and I never felt that I was. That property was hell on earth because I was a fixed wing pilot. I didn't know what any of that stuff was. I barely could tell you what BII was or why it was important, but I had NCOs that were like, hey, ma'am, they're missing all of this stuff. Don't sign for it.
That's what people. You're talking about something that not many people know. It's like don't like. No, it's no big deal. Like
but I
don't.
did,
Like
but
you're like.
But I could have, and I could have gotten in a lot of trouble. But I had multiple NCOs. I mean, my supply sergeant was a spec 4, but she knew her stuff inside and out. And when we needed something, knew people down the street to get it. I mean, it was incredible. I mean, that's how I got through it. I also had been a Ranger wife, so there were times that, at one point we were having a lot of casualties, and a lot of the wives were saying, hey, to our chain of command, unless it's my husband's immediate company, I don't want to know about these anymore. And I argued with our, on BTC with our command team and said, too bad. If their paratrooper is living through that, they don't know just because it's not in his company that's not affecting him. And
right.
She needs to know that. And I lost that battle because it was, hey, not everyone's you, Meg, and we need to protect them. But coming from Ranger Regiment, it didn't matter. You were all on one team and you supported one another. And I think that helped, having that experience of going there, knowing that you're not alone in this and that you can call on people. I mean, I wish I had learned that earlier on, because I said no to a meal train with our first daughter. Because what do we need meals for? It's the 2 of us and 1 kid. No, we don't need meals. That was a definite regret. Never turned down a meal with a new baby.
Well, I mean, the crazy thing that hit me when you said that is all those things that go through, but the emotion of the other service members or other spouses that weren't deployed, and when your friends needed you for the kids, that was you became. We were fighting over to have people's kids. It wasn't well, you take a kid to watch. It's you sent them to where? Those kids come here when you need them, they come right here. They're like your kids. And the same thing as when you left. When you did it, there were people that were doing the same thing for you. Yes. It's that whole thing of, as my kids have grown older, it's they definitely spent a lot of time with other people that they didn't have to, but it was just what we did. They were all together. They're all our kids, and they needed what they needed to do. And it's just I see all of them grown up now, and I'm I remember when they were, 1-year-old changing your diaper. It's so crazy, but you're but then it wasn't the fight to have to help. It was it was a fight to, if you didn't, you weren't the person that got the call. It's so call it's so crazy, so crazy. So well, I want to blow through the military stuff a little bit, if you don't mind. Sure. You think anything else military wise you want to, other than you decide?
No.
After the first year, you ready to get out? Ready to change up a little bit, have a couple more kids. It's maybe this isn't for us.
I think the decision to transition out. We had to. Every move to stay together was a fight, and I'll admit this now, but nepotism in the military is real, and we managed to benefit from it because they did want to, station us far from family when we weren't ready to. And they were talking about separate assignments, and it did mean having to say, hey, Dad, who do we know at aviation branch? Because infantry is willing to bend, and it's aviation getting ready to screw us,
and it shouldn't be that, because that's, to other officers or other people, that gets a little
it does.
I've had friends that have pulled some strings, and we call it the golden ticket. My golden ticket I never pulled it, and Colonel Schwartzman was, let me know about that. But no, I think we all build with your relationship. If you're good, you have the golden ticket. But when you watch somebody doing that, sometimes it's it's not a good thing, really. No. It's somebody, but with the other part about this is, I think, there's 2 parallel careers. I don't want to. Mike's already got enough time, but Mike was on a different, on a little bit different path. So I feel that's, I can understand if I'm a person looking at it, but there's people that call them the golden ticket or use nepotism for some really
Ours was always
unrealistic
to keep
stuff.
us together.
Exactly.
He already has a company command lined up in the 82nd.
Yeah.
Just send me to Fort Bragg.
Yeah,
Put
we'll
me
figure it
on
out.
core staff.
Yeah.
There's an aviation. That was the thing. They kept saying there's no aviation. I'm like, there's an aviation brigade. How can you tell me there's no?
It's all those C-17s.
Yeah.
Now good. That's
Like-
the wrong. Now good. There's all these aircraft flying around all the time. No.
So
Send me to
that
Fort-
was one, and then it was he got picked up to go out to JBLM, and it was there's no assignments for you out there. And it's like, come on, it's a big post. So I found an ROTC job to be an APMS at Pacific Lutheran. I did an interview. They put in a by name request to ROTC branch, and aviation branch was, oh, just kidding. You're going to work in, aviation planning, which was in the basement of the core building. But they got me there, so thank you. Appreciate that. Last job in the Army. And from there, I did a 2-week assignment, again, getting back to the Army. And I managed at the 6-month mark of having our second daughter to be sent to Japan for 2 weeks. So, by 6-month-old and 2-year-old, I'm headed to Japan for 2
I was thankful that I was leaving my
Army.
wife with the kids. Like, not like, I mean, I was like, oh, that's just great. I'm out of here. I'll see you when I see you.
So after that, I mean, that really, at that point, I had already turned my paperwork in,
Yeah.
but that really sealed the deal of like, hey, that's great for a lot of families and a lot of women that can handle that. I wasn't one that could handle it, and I was ready to be home. And yeah, so we made
So we're gonna go on to the next phase.
Yeah, it's great.
First, we're gonna go to the second featured whiskey. We're going to whiskey. And this one's kind of interesting because there's a pickle theme going on. And did you notice it?
I did notice the tag.
I told this to Mike the other day, and I told him not to share it with you. So it just, this is something that that's happened. So the funny thing is, Meg has her crochet pickle. Just upstairs, I noticed there was a Christmas pickle ornament that I've never seen before. I'm like, what is going on? And then like, we actually did a private barrel pick a few years back in 2021, and the name of it is Deal With It. On the side there. So you have the pick. We have our pickle.
Love that.
So you have to drink some of this.
Okay.
So, but the whole pickle theme is coming like full circle. It's kind of crazy. But Rossville, this is Rossville Rye. This is actually from the bourbon nerds. We're getting a little bit nerdy here, but is MGP, but actually is now called as a Ross and Squibb product. But the Ross and Squibb distillery is located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. The company was founded by Cloyd Cray, Sr. in 1941, as Midwest Grain Products, and was a major neutral grain supplier during World War II. The Rossville distillery was founded in 1847 by George Ross and is one of the last Prohibition era distilleries that are still operating. The Rossville distillery was purchased by Seagram's in 1933, and after changing hands with several companies, MGP bought it in 2011 from Pernod Ricard, and then in April 2021, MGP acquired Luxco, adding to more whiskeys to their brands, their portfolio, and then actually changed the name of their own products to Ross and Squibb, which we all know as bourbon people as MGP. It's the weirdest thing they've done, but MGP distills about 50 different brand names other than their own products. Their products now in the Ross and Squibb line are the George Remus, Rossville Rye, Eight and Sand, and then Tanner's Creek. So, like I said, this is from 2021, an oldie. It's still hanging around. I had to dig to find it. I was like, oh shit! If I don't have one of these, what am I going to start? Hitting people up to try to find it. But this one is non-age stated. It's if I remember, it's almost 6 years old. 119.5 proof, so a little bit higher than your wine. It has no artificial things. The same thing you had before. No sugars added. But it's the classic MGP mash bill, 95% rye, 5% malted barley. So you ready for some whiskey?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Bottle's easier to open.
Hey, I had it before. It's just I got it open. Everybody relax. We got it. Here we go. Little or a lot?
Oh, it was good. Mike's always having me taste bourbon, and he'd have to tell you the one that I actually was like, oh, this is so good. He's like, yeah, of course you like the most
You have to
expensive
like it.
bottle I've ever.
And then on the back of the tag, but you have to look at the tag. So we have one of those too.
I
So
like
look at
that.
stuff.
Yes.
I think we
Deal
had.
with
When
it.
did you start the pickle?
About a month ago now.
Oh, so we're gonna have a lawyer contact you because the deal with it might be infringing on our.
Well, his
okay.
Instagram is just Dylan Pickle,
Okay.
so we can always,
So ready to talk about the pickle? Or you want to wait for the pickle?
we can talk about the pickle. He
You ready for the
doesn't.
pickle? I think we have to talk about the pickle now.
He doesn't fit perfectly in with the story, and he's part of the story anyway.
Are we waiting for the pickle now?
No, let's go.
So tell us about operate. I called it what I wrote down. I don't know if you're calling, but I call it Project Just Deal with It.
So just deal with it. Just Dylan Pickle on Instagram. Our middle daughter and I, one night we're looking at funny Instagram reels, and something popped up about an ad for how to do. It's actually a Japanese art of. I'm gonna mispronounce it. Amigurumi. Of crocheting figures so that you can do animals, inanimate objects, the whole bit. And she's like, Mom, you know how to crochet. Like, why don't you do one of these? And I'm like, I've only done blankets and scarves. I'm not so sure about the counting and whatever. And she's like, well, maybe we could find, an easy one. So we got on and looked up easy. And so pickle is a easy
It's a pretty easy.
object, there's only a little bit of counting with having to stitch and round. And so we laughed about it. And I said, well, hey, if it was your bright idea, you're going to have to do it with me. And we're going to learn to just deal with it. And it was this, just deal with it. Well, sure enough, she didn't even make it the first couple stitches of learning how to crochet. So then it quickly, of course, my dear husband started making pickle jokes. And I said, well, you know what? You're going to get the first one. So he did, and he took it on the FTX with him. And the cadets thought it was hysterical that he was taking pictures of his just deal with it pickle. And a couple people that saw the pictures hit me up and said, hey, I like this whole concept of your just deal with it. Could you crochet me a pickle? And they offered to pay for it. So I said, sure, we can do that.
I think you're going to hit my wife up for two of them somehow.
Yeah. I mean, so I do relate it to the resiliency piece. And I tell people that he reminds you when it's out of your control, just deal with it. And the other piece is that I tell people when I'm crocheting for them that this takes a lot of tedious time. How can I pray for you? This is a lot of stitches that I'm thinking about that one person that I'm crocheting it for, because it's just me. This isn't a mass production thing. So I know each person. So I add that to it. And I tell them, I also hope he reminds you that you're never alone, that I've prayed for you through crocheting this. He is now with you, wherever you take him, that just Dylan Pickle is there. So yeah, his Instagram account, I start every post with just that, he's just doing this or he's just doing that.
Yeah, your naming of it is way deeper than ours. It takes it like the 95.5 has it's known to be like a dill. Love you pick up, so we just went with just deal with it, but
yeah,
you kind of trumped me on that a little bit. So
yeah,
you can have the name. It's okay. You can have it. It's
yeah.
fine.
So when Jana has one, you're gonna look at that just Dylan Pickle in a whole new way.
But isn't it weird, the pickle thing? This is something this is what I love about doing this. Is so many things come into effect. Like when I came home today, I saw that ornament. I'm like, why the hell is there?
So
a pickle?
do you know the ornament thing?
No, I have no idea.
So a pickle ornament is hidden on a tree by someone, and then whoever finds it gets to open the first present on Christmas.
I've been in this family for 30 years. Yeah, it probably is. But again, I've been in this family for 30 years. I've never heard about that. Like, because I honestly, I don't even know if you know this, and she doesn't know this yet. Yeah. When I brought it down, I was like, I'm going to give it to Meg. Because it's like, what the hell do we have a pickle ornament for? Like, I thought she just picked it up at Hobby Lobby or something. I'm like, I'm giving this to Meg as a gift. And she's like, my mom gave it to me for this pickle. I'm like, what are they? Now that you explained it, nobody explained that to me at all. So apparently there's a new tradition in the Miller house we're going to initiate this year. The pickle.
Well,
so
maybe it's something different. But
we got to hang that from that. So that ugly
There
ass
you go.
ornament. That ornament's ugly compared to that. But so we'll get back
Okay,
onto post military. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a good break, I think.
That's a good break. Yeah.
What did you think of the bourbon though? Not a fan?
Tastes like bourbon.
What is that? Wow. No. I don't know how to read that. It does taste like bourbon. It tastes like rye, actually. Not bourbon, but it's okay.
Tastes like rye.
But so you get out, Mike's career continues to keep moving on. Now you transition to, which has been our honor, to be honest with the post-military Meg,
Yes.
the spouse Meg, that I'm probably more in awe of all the things you talked about.
Thank
It's
you.
a pretty, in our household, we hold the military spouse to a pretty high level. We've talked about several times. So your life transitions.
Right.
Now you've gotten rid of the military career. Now
Yes.
it's focused on kiddos,
Yes.
right?
Yes. So we had 2 kids when we were both in the Army. We mentioned McKinley in 2011, and then we had Madison in 2013, just before I got out. So I got out of my life, with Mike. We moved back to Fort Bragg. For those of you that's offense, sorry, not sorry. This is Fort Bragg. We moved back to Fort Bragg to our same house. Some of the same people were still there because we were only at JBLM for less than a year. We moved back, and he's a general's aide in JSOC and is gone 3/4 of the time. So he's technically not deployed. He was gone anywhere from 2 to 5 days at any given week. It did not allow for reconnection at all. And by the grace of God, his next assignment was grad school. And so that was when we moved up to Princeton. I spent most of that year not knowing what to do with my hands.
Like Ricky Bobby. You're like,
Yeah.
you should have been crocheting those pickles. Like, you guys get millions right now.
So Carol, who I mentioned was our MFLAC at Bragg, it told me upon, I called her for some counsel when I was getting out of what am I going to do with my life. And she said, Meg, you followed the pipeline your entire life. This is your chance to take a break, figure out who Meg is, think outside the box. You don't have to follow, what does a captain do in the Army for your next job and your next job? Breathe for a while. You don't have to do anything. And, a big thing is going back to grad school or becoming a salesman or whatever the case may be, like right when you get out of the Army. And I made a promise to my aunt at the time that she said, take a year off, no volunteer jobs, no committee leading, be full-time wife, mom, and do whatever you feel like doing. And looking at it now, I had the privilege to not work. I didn't have to work. Mike's job was secure. You have medical, you have dental. It was, I see now, an absolute honor and privilege to just not. And I cried the first day, and it was an October morning that I reached the end of, or afternoon, that I realized I knew our 2 daughters better than anyone because I was the full-time caretaker.
Right.
There was no nanny. There was no dropping them off at someone else's house. We never did traditional daycare. So they always had one-on-one care. And it was like, I didn't need to call anyone for, hey, what do I do about this? I knew our kids best. And that was really empowering for me at the time, because I think, like many veterans transitioning out, it's a big identity loss to no longer wear the uniform. that is not to say there wasn't ongoing struggles with transitioning, but I do remember that day being really empowering.
Yeah, because it's interesting to hear you say that, because what you just said of like raising these kids and knowing them the best is what I resented my wife for a long time, because I wasn't there. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like the things you say are super important. I think other people need to hear and really digest. Like there's a lot of things you're saying that are just like, I feel like you're like the 30,000 level, but they're like hitting like really close to me, because you have, like you said before, like I wouldn't change anything in my life. We we have more money in our family. Could we probably retire early if we did? But yes, however, my kids had my wife like their whole entire time growing up. They didn't go to daycare. My wife was there for we took them to school. There's something that that the military offered us. And then, my next job, and when I got out, offered that. And that's like a priceless thing, really. Like at the time I was like so resentful of it, because I was the one who wasn't there. But as I've gotten older, I look back and I'm like, maybe that was what my sacrifice was for that, for them to have that, for you all to have that. It's a pretty unique experience.
Well, and so what do we do about that?
What do we do about that? How do you just turn that back on me fast? I don't have a note on that one. Let me ask you another question before. I think a lot of it is like what you do about it is honestly is like talking about it, and we're coming. You and I are both coming from a place here in the past few years about talking things, and being open. Like I wouldn't say that a long time ago. There was a lot like I would never have said that probably 2 months ago, that those are things I resented my wife for. Like it was something I caused, but I was still, when you look back at it, I was like, I still feel that way with my 23-year-old son. Like I know that he is going to go to my wife first.
Right.
And for a long time not for a long time. Let's not tell stories here. It still bothers me. Right. But I look back but I have to look at it in a positive way. It is what it is. He does have someone that he can go to that knows him better than anybody, that knows everything about him and can give him what he needs, right? The answer he needs. And if he can't, he knows he can come to me. But I've looked at it as more like I think the talking about it is it may not be the most opportune thing for me, but it's better for everybody else. So that's how I kind of look at it. Does that make sense? So you got to kind of look at it in a different, got to look differently, right? Different lens. Yeah. Yeah. And it may not make me feel good, but it makes them feel good. And I have to be okay with that.
Right. Well, and I think to remember too, the trade-offs, that it works both ways, because there's been resentment. I think there's resentment on the spouse side too, of you get to do something other than parenthood that you're called to do. And parenthood, like these kids need that stability. And because you're off fighting and, Lord willing, winning our nation's wars, I'm here doing the parenting work, which as a Christian should be a 2-person job. And for that to be put on like me as the spouse was very difficult to grapple with, and to honor my spouse in a way that was respectful, and at the same time be able to stick up for myself, that, hey, when you do come home and are around,
you better get in line.
A little bit.
But it's true. I mean, cause like I want to go back to resentment, because that's the thing. So did you resent Mike for what he was doing? Not what he's doing, but like at the period of like he's not around. I mean, that's because I think at the time when you're in that doing that, it really becomes. I mean, you said it earlier. You said it about an hour ago. Hey, all I got to do is need a couple moments to thing. I'm gonna just pawn my kids off somebody. I'm gonna go to war. Like it's so there's and you're in that mind. You kind of, for me, and I can't speak for other people. It was like, hey, you married me, you knew what I was gonna do, and this is your job. My job is this. That's your job. Right. And I know that's one of the things that always eats me up, is like, that's where I feel the worst about it, is like everything we've done in our military career doesn't equate to some of the things I've missed, or in my mind that I think I've missed. I mean, it's important to be kids want a father and a mother, right?
Yes.
They don't want someone who's off doing like. I would have to imagine like your kids are getting old enough to understand what
Right.
Mike does, right, or did.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are like people that aren't in the mix, right? Like
Right.
Range Regiment, all this kind of stuff. Like make movies, books about that. We said before, like I don't think that your son cares about that as much as like, oh, my dad's my football coach.
Yes and no. I think being so deep into it and having both of us openly talk about it, and I have said more than once that I only sacrifice for the best. I wouldn't be willing to make the sacrifices I was willing to if Mike weren't who we were. That he's not running off to sell widgets somewhere, like leaving me at home. He's doing something that we both believe is God honoring called to do. And he has always done more than just the job, whether it be mentoring or seeking new ways of growth or learning. That, yes, like I would be lying if I said there weren't some resentment of like, hey, I could be doing X, Y, Z, and instead I'm home wiping noses. At the same time, I wouldn't do it if he weren't worth it. And that because of my background and my experiences, I know it's worth it. And I know it's worth having a mom at home that is not miserable and is finding ways to excel and is finding ways to help you excel. As the child that I had modeled for me, I mean, my mom was still, running for years after having me. She competed in all Army cross country and track, when I was a kid. I remember being at her races and that sort of thing. I remember her having fun with friends, and she wasn't a miserable Army wife. So modeling that for the kids was really important to me. And that, hey, yes, daddy's gone. We miss him, and we're still going to have fun.
Right.
And we're still going to enjoy doing the things we like doing when daddy's here. And we can miss him at the same time. And that principle of holding both in tension, that, okay, go ahead and cry because you're tired and it's bedtime and you miss daddy. And tomorrow you're going to wake up and go to school because that's what daddy would want you to do. That has always been important to me.
And I think you lived through a time where you're able to do that. Like, there's your resiliency. You're like what you're saying. It wasn't there in 2001. It wasn't there in 2002. It took a long time for people to understand that. Like, it would go back to questions like, how do you, like, I think a lot of spouses, what you said before, they do stick around because we are doing the right thing. Right. And that's the hard thing that people don't understand. A lot of them don't get. Right. You're talking about, there's a lot of spouses that don't get that. It's like that resentment takes over.
Well, and there's the ugly side of it. There is the substance abuse of having a service member that doesn't handle the trauma well. And I don't hold it against those spouses that don't stick around. Mike recognized when he wasn't handling it well, and, went to a chaplain or got together with buddies and talked about it and handled it in a healthy way. We talked about it. Like, we joke that our pillow talk is unlike anything else because I know, Army terms, and I have some point of reference and I have perspective on that kind of thing. And so that has enabled us, I think, to thrive through some really hard things.
Yeah, and the key, I think, is like we've learned a lot of is to talk things out, and that's one of the biggest things. It would have to. I have to look at you look at relationships, right? You just said something. It's like you guys got like a golden ticket. Like I look at it like you understand a lot more than you've been there. You understand it, so it's easy to relate. So for some of us that don't have a spouse that was like that, it's hard to relate some of these things. So that's one of the. It's like almost like you guys were. It's like the perfect connection, like that how it works.
Well,
I mean, a little bit.
Also argue though, yes, that we are unique and we are the same, which you will probably hear me say that a lot. The hard piece of that is because we both know it would be like, okay, so yeah, I got it. So why don't you just go to, so-and-so and work it out? Whereas your spouse may say, oh, that sounds really hard. Like, I'm sorry you're going through that. Whereas
I don't think it gets that far. If I'm being honest, it doesn't get that far because there's something you're just not going to talk about.
Right.
You guys have that ability, like what we've learned. When you have people that have connections and understanding, it's easier to talk about stuff. When you don't, you just don't engage with that person. So there's no like, oh, I think you should do this. It's like they don't even know what the fuck you're dealing with. You're acting out in a different way. You're doing shit that you shouldn't be doing. And because you can't talk about it. Like you asked me about 30 minutes how do you deal with all this stuff is a lot of everything you deal with I think is, and I'm learning more and more is to talk about it, talk about it in a safe place, a safe space, and that helps. Like we can't do any of this alone, you know what I mean? Right. So you talk about bending and stuff now. So one of the things you wrote in your bio was the move to Ohio was your 24th move in your life. 24th move, yes. And you said you're not moving again. No, I'm not. We have a great. Mike, did you hear that? I'm sure he knows that, but I just thought,
when we made the decision to turn down battalion command, I let him know that I never want to see another brown moving box, and that our back porch view sunset is like the last sunset I want to see. Like, don't take this away from me. So, luckily there are plenty of jobs in the Columbus area. So
well, no, I talked about, I mean, I think
too much of an issue.
Well, I think and talk with Mike off. Just know Mike. It's like, I think I'm joking around, but I don't think he has one issue with that. No, and I think he's going to hold that to it. So which is what makes him what he is, but that's fine. But now you're here. That this is the home to stay until you said you pass away. Right. Let's talk about some things you're doing, like your spin where we talk about all the things you're doing. Like one of the big things that your number one thing is the riveting mission. Yes. LLC. Yes. So talk a little bit about that. Yeah. So I've been doing fitness coaching for years, and it got to the point, Mike pointing out that, hey, you're doing a lot more than just helping people work out. It's time that you created. I say we started Riveting Mission because Mike actually named it for me. So I started Riveting Mission to build and mentor women one-on-one to be more resourceful and resilient was important to me. So based on Rosie the Riveter, thinking back to World War II, what those women went through of things like victory gardens or volunteering at the Red Cross, going to work in factories and having to learn technical skills, all while being wife and mom during a wartime. And I relate with that on many levels. And thinking back about my experiences and how to take book knowledge from being a personal trainer, going to the Army Resilience School, also getting a master's in counseling, and taking my personal experience and that academic knowledge to not only share, but to hopefully empower and encourage women that you can thrive, that there are resources out there. There's, I refer to the verse in Esther that perhaps you were made for such a time as this, that in the technological age of things, there is no reason you can't learn a skill, read a book. We talk about and saw the power of meditation of, for any Bluey, the cartoon. You probably don't know Bluey, the cartoon. No, I know it, but thank God I haven't. I'm past those days of like, I know Blue's Clues. Is that the same line?
Oh, no. No, not the same
Come
thing.
on, I know, but
No,
that,
no.
that was what I grew up with.
No,
Come on.
so
The kids grew up with. I guess I did grow
but
up with it as well.
there's an episode where Chili, the mom, sometimes moms just need 20 minutes, and validating moms out there that it is okay to say, just need 5 minutes, escape for 5 minutes and come back out there. And also in the, co-ed space, small group space, the importance of building those interpersonal resilient skills, why empathy is important. We were kind of talking before of like the bottom line, but that you will have more productive workers if they are put in roles that play to their strengths. Well, do you even know what their strengths are? Do you know what they value as a person and what they're going to be best at, so you can get the most out of them? So that, hope that kind of tells a little bit about it. But life coaching women is the main role of Riveting Mission.
It started before you came here to Columbus, though, right?
It did. It started, I was going to do virtual personal training with it, with a little bit of life coaching added in to be a different type of personal trainer, to do a little bit of the lifestyle coaching. And I quickly had a couple clients say, hey, the fitness stuff is great, but I really just want to sit down and talk with you for my hour. And so then it morphed and I pivoted more into the life coaching space. And that was when we were living here within our first couple months that Mike said, hey, I'm non-deployable for the couple years that we're here. If you want to go back to school, now's the time.
Yeah, you need to do it now.
So I specifically picked.
But he's gone a lot now too, though.
It's all relative.
Yeah.
man. Like,
I mean, it is. I mean, like I'm always like,
it's
I'm like, what do you know, Mike? He's like, I'm at a football game. He's on big. He's on. He's like a big time. The Big Ten up there. It was so funny how many people.
He's such a ham.
He was like big time there for a little bit. That's not.
Yeah. So it is morphed, and so I picked a career or a degree program that if we moved for battalion command, I would be finished before we moved. So I finished this past May, and I've been doing it then.
So how many clients now? Is it? Do you have a number of how many clients you have now, or? Growing?
Well, I also have put it a little bit on the back burner because I'm working with a veterans nonprofit.
And you have 4 kids and
doing part-time work for Veterans Future Foundation. That's a nonprofit that supports and empowers veterans during their transition through scholarshiping. So right now we scholarship veterans. Well, and you can actually be active duty, guard, or reserves to go to the University of Health and Performance and earn either a personal training certification while you're there or an integrative health coach certification that sets you up to be a board certified health coach. And so I'm doing group coaching and their social media and stuff.
I can't imagine you doing more than one thing at one time. I mean, it just seems so.
It's all in the same wheelhouse, though.
No, but,
I mean, mental health, crocheting pickles, and
it's so funny because it's like I'm joking around. Like I feel like. So do you feel like you're comfortable in doing multiple things? Because it feels like you from just listening and knowing like you had your hands on a lot of things and just multiple things always on your plate. Do you feel comfortable in that time frame, or
now I do?
Okay.
There was a lot of discontentment with not having something of my own, which is how I got into fitness coaching. Was like, hey, I'm going to go crazy as wife and mom if I don't use my gifts in some way. It was doing that I found that contentment and was able to be more present. And I always said, leaving the Army, that I would never do a job that didn't also make me a better wife and mom, which when I found the Army Resilience program and learned the academic words for what I was already doing and coaching was a big light bulb of, wow, there is a whole world out there that makes perfect sense to me. that would benefit couples, would benefit families. And so I actually did an interview today with a counseling center that's looking to branch into coaching. And as I'm telling them what I'm already doing with moms, would say, hey, we would love to develop workshops around this and have you do this with groups of people. Because I go back to my story is unique, your story is unique, and there is a lot that's the same. And being able to build those connections and share the uniqueness that we can learn from together.
So one of the questions I had,
Mm-hmm.
I have to go back to it. Is it harder to lead or mentor soldiers or officers
Mm-hmm.
or the kids? What makes one harder than the other?
I would say soldiers and officers are harder.
Why is that?
Well, because our kids grew up with me and there's no experience or baggage to deal with. I mean, as you know from going through SAW, we all have a lot of stuff. And also, I know my kids probably better than I know myself, really. And the intimacy that's there of spending so much time with them that I can tell when a kid is bluffing because I know what it really looks like. Whereas with soldiers and officers, you have to take them at their word. Also with kids, like, hey, you're being emotional, like, go take a minute.
I'm gonna ask you though, because
Yes.
McKinley's 11, right?
12, yeah.
12. Okay, so getting this, we're gonna answer this question 5 years from now. I'm gonna ask you the same question, and we're gonna record it as well because I'm like, oh, I can't wait to experience it. No, it's a great answer. I mean, those are one of the ones I wanted to hit you up. And so another quick question before the final question we're gonna ask. I know we're getting long, but I don't care. It's my podcast, right? We can do whatever we want to do, right? It's fun. So you brought it up about you mentioned it real quick, and I'll let you keep going on it. But I've started to ask this question to people, like, what was the hardest part of getting out of the military? And yours is very unique, right? Hardest part leaving the military, losing your identity, losing your job, losing your friends. For yours, it's different, and I think I know your answer.
Yeah. So mine was much. This is gonna sound really bad, but it is what it is. Was the clout. I was no longer Captain Kelvington. I was Mrs. Kelvington. Going in and trying to get something updated or enroll our kids in youth services and being told, I didn't dot an I correctly, was humbling to say the least. There was definitely a big difference, of having to have my husband's signature on something or always having to have a power of attorney with me whenever I went to do something because his status mattered more than mine now. Maybe just a little bit of resentment,
A little bit of resentment in there. We gotta think of like some crocheted animal for like a little. Get on that website and pick like a little resentment rat or something.
Yeah, it does less damage than throwing something.
By the way, we said that first before she tried to do that, but no. Actually, no. We've thrown the word SAW around a little bit.
Yeah.
So, like many veterans like myself,
yes.
I've struggled with PTS and things like that and depression.
Mm-hmm.
What's your journey in that? Did you?
So
when did that start for you? Because I know you. I know you obviously have. Obviously, we share that that sameness, right?
Yeah. Sameness. So mine.
But I'm proud to have that now. I'm proud to say that now. For a long time ago, I wasn't. Like I used to think it was a shame of that, but I'm very proud of that.
So mine was. I think you shared it, but for Wear Blue, Run to Remember did a video, And it was during that Memorial Day time that I finally said the words to Mike of, I think I have survivor's guilt. And he shrugged and was like, yeah, of course you do. Like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, like we noticed it for like, how did you what you thought you didn't? And I'm like, no, I didn't really think it was a thing because I wasn't there. My survivor's guilt comes from being on route attachment. And I had always associated with those words with I needed to be in the battle and be a survivor of the battle and not 4,000 miles away. And so my story with that is like, why am I so emotional at Memorial Day when many of these people I didn't have a personal relationship with? I knew their names and I knew their faces because I put together their memorial slides, but I didn't actually know them. Yet every Memorial Day, it's like I could feel this dark cloud coming over. And then last December, I had a depressive episode that I haven't had since I was in my 20s in the grayness of West Point, where it was honestly fairly typical. And I came out of that and told Mike after the fact, and he's like, why didn't you say anything? And it's like, well, man, you don't deal with it. You don't know what it's like to get into the dark room of depression and know there's light outside the door and not know how to get there and feel like you deserve to stay in the dark room. And he's like, dude, you got to get help. And so it was after that I was already going to counseling and, told my therapist like, hey, I had a really bad depressive episode. And so, got help with that. And it really only lasted a couple days. And then it was like, I wonder what that was all about. And so then when Mike learned about SAW, which I was already, you talked about social media. I was already following him on social media.
It's like 3 steps to anybody.
Yeah. And, had, I think, already probably mentioned it, but I think a lot of times it sounds like, wah, 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 wah. So he comes to me and says, hey, I saw this program called Save a Warrior. I was
You're like, Mike, come on, you're killing me, buddy. I've been carrying you for how many years?
I'm like, oh, you're kidding. Is it a program?
Never heard of this.
Is it a program in Ohio? Like, huh?
In Hillsborough?
So he went and he came home and was like, babe, you got to go. Like, I don't know when the next rostering call is, but we need to get you on it. And so I did, and it was life-changing. And I do still communicate with, via text with my whole cohort and with one of my SAW sisters. We talk every week and are going through the traits together. It is, I don't think, anything you can describe unless you send somebody there. That 76 hours of intensive non-therapeutic work that had more impact on me than a year and a half of therapy. And I have a great therapist, but
it's I think we all struggle with everyone that's been through it. It's hard to put into words. It's like everybody talk to, it's life changing, right? That's and then a lot of these, everyone down here I've talked to about it to some extent. I think maybe a couple I haven't, maybe one. I think just Jared over there beside. It's definitely it put it into perspective of like the same thing you said of like we're the same but we're different, and it's just one of those things. So I had an interesting thing today about that. Somebody reached out to me and it told me they didn't get into SAW, which is like I was like I want everybody to go there, but like you have to follow that, like whatever that I get it. Like I'm not in charge of that. That's not my that's not my thing. But there's like you got to find it. But the same thing is like, hey, I found something else and it's different. So there's a lot of organizations like SAW. It's just you just have to find what works for you to get you to like reframe or
Right.
look at things differently, and it is definitely an impact. It's like it's changed my life on a lot of things. It's made me look at, like you talk about, like what the resentment, a lot of anger that I had
Right.
before, a lot of things that it's hard to put into words if you've
Right.
never put to it, but it's
Right.
a guys like Mike, there's people like before us that have done it, that
Right.
for any of us to go there and do that, it's just crazy to be able to open up and share that. It goes back to what we said earlier. It's like the key is the talking. Like we opened up the things that we would probably never said to anybody in your entire life, right? Like things, honestly, like you and I can walk out the door, I'm going to talk to you differently than any of these guys in the room, including my dad, right?
Right.
And that's important for us. I think it's
me too. And being a resilience coach, and I'm not always resilient. And so that, imposter syndrome of like, how am I having a depressive episode when I coach this to other people? I know the skills. I know the tools. That you need those people talking to you. I mean, there's a reason I wear a whale tail necklace now, to remind myself to look for the whales out there, and that they are there if you just seek them. So,
and I mean, I think it's like I said before, I think you should be hard on yourself about that, because no one's perfect.
Right.
We all are, just we're on our own journey. But yeah, it's definitely a different thing. But I'm glad you found that. I'm glad it's interesting. It's again, I find myself. It's funny that why I having you both on now is just like there's so many things I'm kind of jealous of, because like you had that connection of the military to get through some of like the tough times, and like especially now in the next phase of my life where I'm trying to like heal and be better and like be able to help other men and women. It's like it would be able to explain to to have that, to look over and have somebody like left and right. So you and Mike,
we appreciate that.
I'm envious. I don't want to say jealous, because that's a bad word. I'm envious about it, and I couldn't be more proud to have you guys as my brothers and sister, and it's got to be a special relationship.
I mean, we thank you for what you do. Like being able to have an outlet like this of, my dad asked me like, well, what kind of podcast are you doing? And I was like,
I don't know.
I don't know how to humbly say this, but to go talk about myself. And he's like, about what? I'm like, my life, your life. Oh, okay. Have fun talking about yourself.
Well, I mean, I think of it like it is true, but it's what we started from the very premise of it's your story, right? It really is. Like what you're saying, we're the same, but we're different or whatever. Like, but it is true. I think the key thing in a lot of this was my way, like before, pre-Saul, like it's just sharing like everybody's. It's crazy how I hope people that are listening. It's very similar for the military people. There's a lot of things we have similarities, but for the people that aren't, it's. There's a lot of similarities in your life that if you really sit back and listen to it, we have to listen to everybody's story. Everybody's story is different. It's crazy. And we have to share it. It's like honestly, people I'm in awe of, like, I'll say it now. Like Mike's a pretty impressive guy, right?
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people look at him. No, in reality, like you look at him and you're like, if you put it in a uniform, if everybody looks at him, dude, he is going to like, people are going to like,
yeah,
it's just hard. You know what I'm talking about. He's got everything going on that every guy that wanted to be in the military wants to be him. But like, and you look at it and you're kind of like, I'm in awe of him. Like, am I in awe of him? I'm not. After like getting to know you now and talking to you now, like, I'm in awe of. I'm in awe of you. Honestly, it's like you being able to like to deal with the hard part of it. It's the truth, and it's like I've said before. The spouses in the military, the people that are doing the work, the hard. I mean, honestly, the hard work that are raising that have raised a fucking generation of kids. Like, you really have, like, women like you and some men have raised a generation of kids. My wife raised my kids. Like, if you really think about it to a certain extent, like, yes, I was there, but that's what I'm in awe of. That's really that's hard.
Right. Well, and I appreciate that. I receive it and accept it and I don't think it, I heard on Mike's, but I don't think it goes as unnoticed as maybe it seems. That I think there's enough, oh, not enough, there's never enough. There's awareness now that there is a whole generation of spouses that put any desire, well, and
There's National Hot Dog Day. There's National Pizza Day. Where's National Military Spouse Day? Is there one?
there is one.
But what, I didn't know that. Let me know. What day is it? I didn't know that.
I don't remember, but there is one. I
But
did know
it could
that.
be that important, right? I mean,
Right,
there is,
right.
like, I mean, where it's like honestly, I did know that is out there,
Yeah.
but what is the day of like of the importance?
Right.
Of, honestly, it's to me, it's just as important as. There's not a day that like because it's the day like Veterans Day. You talk about
Right,
defense, like I get it. For other people, like for me, it's not a big deal. Veterans Day is like really not a big deal because we've lived it. We know
Right.
all these people all the time. It's like
Right.
I appreciate everything they've done. I don't need that one day to like
Right.
refocus and
Get your
and that,
free
the same thing
coffee.
with like get my 10% discount like my dad, free meals at like you talk to my dad. If you guys, I'll give you my dad's email address. He'll tell you next Veterans Day where to get all your free meals from. He's got a spreadsheet on that. But but I feel like I know what you're saying. I accept what you say,
Yeah.
but I don't feel like the military spouse gets as much recognition as they really should. That's how I've always felt. I'll never change that because it's like we're doing what we're doing. We have done great work. We will continue to do great work. What we're doing is justified. It's moral.
Right.
It's the right thing to do. But at the same time, there's someone back there that is literally like raising our kids and teaching them those same morals that we got taught somehow
Yes.
and to move forward. I mean, like literally women like you have raised a generation of kids.
Well, I guess not arguing with that. My addition to it is it's a lot easier to do that when your spouse is a service member doing that kind of selfless sacrificial work, as long as you keep that in the forefront.
Yeah.
So
Good point. So ready to close it down? Anything else you want to talk about?
oh, this was great. I really appreciate it.
Talking about you, your dad's gonna be disappointed. Yeah, we talked about. She talked about herself for 2 hours and 20 minutes. This is great. We could probably talk more. So, again, we're gonna get. As always, we'll talk about. This comes a time at the podcast where we talk about what really the mission of Pours with Patriots is obviously to impact veteran suicide, to end it. I wish I could end it, with a snap of the fingers, but that's not going to happen. So again, tonight we're going to take our opportunity to honor a veteran who took their life. So tonight we're going to honor U.S. Navy Commander Jonathan Michael Volke, 44 years old. Jonathan took his life on October 27th, 2023, while his ship was moored in Cleveland, Ohio. Jonathan was born December 24th, 1978 in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. At the time of his death, Jonathan was the executive officer aboard the littoral combat ship USS Maritime LCS-25. Jonathan enlisted in the U.S. Navy in 2007 and then commissioned through the Officer Candidate School as a surface warfare officer. Jonathan served aboard the guided missile frigate USS Kaufman, guided missile destroyers USS John McClane, and the USS Fitzgerald, and commanded the Avenger-class mine countermeasure ship USS Patriot. While ashore, Jonathan served as a Naval Surface Force Pacific Japanese-based Destroyer Squadron 15 and Littoral Combat Squadron 2. Jonathan's decorations include the Meritorious Service Medal, Navy Marine Corps Commendation Medal, 3 awards, and the Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal, 2 awards. Jonathan survived by his wife, Corey, sons Bruno and Nino, parents Skip and Louise, and other family members. And again, if you're a service member or know a service member that's struggling and needs help, is consider suicide, you need to contact the Veterans Crisis Hotline at 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or you can dial 988, or you can actually text 838-255, or you can actually chat now at veteranscrisisline.net/chat. I always hate that. That's the worst part of the night. I always thought it would get easier. It gets harder, actually, as we do that. So, again, if you know anybody that's struggling, there's many things that we talk about these podcasts, reach out to the Veterans Crisis Hotline, reach out to somebody that can talk, that you feel comfortable talking to. There is other options for you. So we're going to end it with before we finally end it, there's a big game coming up. We'll get important. So you got to pull it up. Pull it up. But the Army Navy game is coming up. Kind of coincides with a fundraiser that with the fraternal police that are helping us out. Come join us December 9th. I tried to get Mike. Mike was like, we're busy. It's a big deal. We got 4 kids. What's going on? Meg's doing 17 things. Just leave the kids with Meg. She's done it before. It's fine. But there's going to be a bourbon raffle. We haven't figured out what we're going to do, but I'm pretty sure we're going to have a pretty kick-ass bourbon raffle at this site. But if you don't know what's coming on, like I'm an anti OSU fan. Does that make sense? So like this week has been great for me for watching the fans melt down. So this to me has been the biggest. I don't understand words coming out of your mouth. I know, but this is I'm only joking. But nobody does in the state of Ohio. Like everyone in Michigan, they get it. But this is the biggest. I think this is the greatest college rivalry in all of sports. I remember it from growing up. It's no one's talking about Air Force, screw Air Force, but we did beat Air Force pretty handily. Dan was bringing that up today. I can't believe it, but this is a big game. This is the most important game of the year, any sport to me. So what's your prediction? We got to get your prediction. Who wins? The score. What's the score? Give us a score.
21-3.
Wow, you're going.
Go big or go home.
It's 21-3.
Yeah.
Really? I mean, Navy does suck.
I mean, we're not putting money on this, right? So
you want to bet? You want to bet $20?
No.
Let's bet a free pickle for my wife.
Okay.
Okay. So 21-3. That's your final score.
Oh, we're doing it's not just if they win.
We'll figure it out. We're gonna do a bet off.
You want to have like a parlay on this?
I don't even know what a parlay is. No, I'm not a gambler, but we'll figure it out. But no, but in all seriousness, like in a week, we like to hype some stuff up. But like a little over a week, Army Navy game. If you're rooting against Army, you're wrong. But if you have a chance, come and see us. It's a great cause. We want to thank the fraternal police for helping us out with this, and one of our board members, Joe, for putting this in place for us. So come join us. We're gonna have some really good opportunities for you to win some really good bourbon as well. So come out and see us. And what's that?
Open bar.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I forgot it is an open bar. Food and bar is open. Everyone's like open bar.
Where's our tradition? You go and watch the game.
You can come watch it with us right now. Hey, I will ditch your tradition anytime to get a free bar. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, it is like the tickets are on here. We'll post it. We're gonna be hyping up here. We've been waiting to do it. You've seen it on Boards with Patriots, but I don't want that to be. Just come out there, do it. Like enjoy the game, but like if you're against Army, you're wrong. We know that.
Naturally.
So yeah, I'm not thinking. Knock it off over there, Dan. You're not going to win, dude. We have your number. Like, I'm not going 21-3. I'm going. I don't know. 28, 13.
I'll take it.
Oh, see, I was kind of doubting us scoring that many points. You're going.
It's Navy.
I mean,
Navy sucks. We ruined Air Force's whole season. They were undefeated. They haven't won since. We broke them. Like it's the Commanders.
Okay.
So we'll talk offline while we're back. So, but we're going to end it with a quote here. A couple quotes. We're going to transition more back to, like I told you before we talked. We had an aviation quote as an aviation aviation officer that I'm a little bit, kind of a big deal flying around. I'm not going to lie, but like I told you before, honestly, like, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart is what your most amazing attribute to me is like you holding down the fort and being an Army wife. So this is from Angela Rickett's book, No Man's War, Relevant Confessions of an Infantry Wife. It's the wide variation of women in our little shared petri dish that makes our lives never boring. Really all that we have in common is we each fall in love with a dude in uniform. The rest of it's a wild card. Each of us trying to get through the day, the deployment, and the time in between. So have you read that book?
No, but I was going to recommend there's a book called The Annals of an Army Wife that was written by oh, this is terrible. I should know her actual name, but I believe it was by George C. Marshall's wife. And it's amazing reading it, her stories from World War II and how much you could relate. And again, it goes back to the like, I am unique and we are the same. That an army, and she was general's wife going through World War II, and there I was, Captain Major's wife going through GWAT, and it was like, wow, like we could be best friends.
we could drink some wine.
Yeah, we can drink some wine.
Bourbon, maybe not for. I feel like maybe for her, but not for Meg. She's not a huge bourbon fan. So, and we're gonna end it. And I've added something since I came out from Saul, a quote for a little bit of mental health healing. So this is from Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist, a pretty influential Buddhist monk. The cry we hear from deep in our hearts comes from the wounded child within. Healing this inner child's pain is the key healing to transforming anger, sadness, and fear. So we're gonna end that quote and end episode 45. We should probably have you on again, like Mike. I feel like we have to have part 2. We'll talk about it after, just to trump Mike. But thank you again. It's been an honor to have you on. I can't tell you how excited I've been to have you on here. And like I said before, your story is humbling, and you're an amazing person.
Really
and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
So,
thank you so much.
We will see everyone in a couple weeks, and everyone have a great night. Thanks.